Hello and welcome to yet another video. This is the 12th episode in which Naruto's childhood happens differently. After an incident, Naruto grows up as a guest of the Hyuga clan, but he is more interested in his clan's legacy and aspires to be Hokage. However, a certain fox always gets in his way. Please like and subscribe to show your support. Let's get the show started. Aburame Shino was not someone who easily displayed his emotions. He maintained a peaceful and composed demeanor for as long as he could remember. His behavior was characterized by rational reasoning rather than chaotic emotions. Despite the expected good behavior of Aburame, Shino's calmness was not as high today. It was necessary for him to intentionally hide the frown that kept appearing on his face. He considered loyalty to his team to be of utmost importance. His teammates were a valuable bond to humanity, but his insects were less challenging to communicate with. He began to doubt the efficiency of his team in current times, leading him to regret not being a member of their original team. Kiba was an anomaly to Shino, but due to his emotional nature, he and Kurenai were easier to interact with. Shino was left feeling helpless as he observed Kakashi, Uchiha, and Haruno Sakura in disarray. It is true that Shino could not hold Sakura accountable for her changing behavior. The Kunoichi's mother had died first, and then her father passed away in an accident. Shino was able to understand Sakura's grief, but his disbelief was unexpected due to her anger. He couldn't understand why someone would accuse a drunk person of having an accident, or why she would be angry with someone who had already left their world. Why did she hold her father responsible for something? Shino was aware that alcohol was utilized by many shinobi to temporarily alleviate their emotions. Although the Aburame did not need a crude technique to control themselves, they understood its function well, even though the method was flawed. That was reflected in the number of accidents caused by drunk people, such as the recent Senju Tsunade rampage through the main street of Konoha. Those who were inebriated were not responsible for their actions, as per the definition of non-control individuals. The Aburame's teachers were more skilled than others, even though it was a grave offense to them. The insects exhibited the way they did, which was less perplexing. Shino found the behavior of his former teammate to be the most perplexing in comparison to their previous teammates. Insects were not subject to resentment. The insects did not attempt to commit pointless violence, especially towards allies, but Uchiha Sasuke had to be hospitalized for those reasons. Shino mentioned that he and his team visited him there, but none of the others appeared to be present. Sakura's lack of concern for Sasuke and her tendency to flirt with him like she usually does, necessitating Shino to acknowledge that this was the only positive outcome from the traumatic events. Their sensei, Kakashi, appeared to be unable to express themselves. Shino assumed that he was mostly unhappy with Sasuke, but questioned why Kakashi didn't take action earlier. There were all the indications that Sasuke had been experiencing temper issues. There were unmistakably unresolved issues. Shino had been the most talked about of the four. Despite not speaking more than his usual tone, Shino couldn't help but let out a sigh during his return to his clan's compound after an hour. Instead of Sakura-san claiming innocence, I am now beginning to believe that Naruto Nuppo was not at fault. Despite the fact that Sasuke's actions are highly irrational, his unfounded attack would indicate that the source of his disagreement with Naruto could also be his, therefore, I may have unfairly judged Narusuko. Interacting with other humans was a perplexing activity. Extremely nonsensical. Looking at his shoulder, Rado noticed that Enko was feeling completely the same way he did. They looked unsuitable for this location. Is it true, Mitarashi-san and I should dash? Hiruzen taunted him gently, saying, you are no longer my Hokage, Rado-kun. It's important for both of you to stay in this location, no matter what. If Jiraiya or Tsunade need help, you must remain in close proximity to each other. You're going to forgive that kid, right? Enko questioned. Enko-chan agreed, and I've told him to do it now, Hiruzen said with a smile, leaving the two Tokubetsu Jonin who were confused. Our objective is to do this on the highest point of the mountain ridge, where minimal damage remains and within the Uzumaki compound barrier. Jiraiya and Tsunade are also present in this location. It's important to keep in mind that any negative feedback from Enko will have a significant impact on the fan, he said. Rado, who was too enamored with Hiruzen to publicly disagree, silently agreed. Enko blinked and asked, "Wow, did he really get on me?" Hiruzen conveyed his concern for Naruto-kun's fate to both of them. "I haven't seen you for a while, but I noticed that you were worried about someone else. According to how people treat me, I usually don't give much thought to others." "That kid is a unique individual," Enko declared. Although occasionally frustrating, the mission was enjoyable nonetheless. With a slight shift in her shoulder, it became clear to Hiruzen that she was pointing towards the cursed seal Orochimaru brought with her. "I'm hearing you say that again," Rado muttered. "I'm amazed that even Mr. is making jokes like this," Hiruzen remarked, reflecting on the times his guards were at campfires. "It's so nostalgic to think back to those days," she said. Genma's death saddened him, as he sighed and mourned the loss of his life in the hands of the Akatsuki shinobi who had tried to take Gaara and Naruto. Tsunade exclaimed, "He's occupied, sir," before moving away. "I still have the impression that you've lost it, though." "He is not entirely unintelligent, that's for sure," Jiraiya declared before them. Rado observed the melancholy expression on the Godame Hokage's face. According to him, he needs to utilize the Kyuubi's chakra once more, Tsunade quipped. "You're aware of the demon's impact on him, and you've decided to proceed with it even though Baki has indicated that Gaara may remain in this location for as long as necessary." "He did," Jiraiya sighed. "Tsunade is aware that the fate of their Jinchuriki is dependent on us, and Naruto to some extent. If he is rational, they are aware that Gaara is one of their most potent assets. Why did Baki choose to give Naruto the scrolls, even though they were meant to demonstrate his unwavering loyalty to Gaara?" Hiruzen expressed surprise by saying that he was given copies of Pakura's scrolls to practice her Shikuten abilities. "Naruto appears to be prepared on his feet." Jiraiya nodded in agreement. Although the relationship with Tsunade was not particularly strained, the signing of new treaties in the past week, following Jiraiya's appointment as Godame, resulted in a satisfactory resolution of tensions between Suna and Konoha. They held a strong disdain for breaking newly signed treaties in their culture. The attack on Konoha during the Chunin exams had dealt a significant blow to Tsunade's reputation. The Council of Suna was receptive to the election of Jiraiya and had to make concessions after those events. Jiraiya was aware that the recent progress between Kirigakure and Konoha had an impact, as Tsunade was afraid to be excluded from the discussion. Jiraiya believed that the act of returning Kankuro with the remains of the deceased Kazekage was a brilliant decision, as it had contributed to Suna's positive energy on his side. Jiraiya placed greater importance on the partnership between Suna and Konoha rather than the possibility of uncovering the secrets behind the late Kazekage's Kekei Genkai. The council's members argued that Konoha should prioritize power, but Jiraiya disagreed. In his opinion, the use of power resulted in more war, but achieving peace would necessitate kindness and tolerance. The teachings imparted by Sandaime to his students were in line with Jiraiya's personal beliefs on the cycle of hatred. Tsunade was hesitant about hurrying things like this. "It seems to cause problems, and why?" Naruto inquired, gesturing over Gaara while attempting to clear his and the Kyuubi's chakras. The changes that he would insert in Gaara's seal were already drawn by him, and Jiraiya was watching closely. The professor, Gamazu, and he were both convinced that the Naruto design would not be effective. Jiraiya was taken aback by Naruto's remarkable progress in Fuinjutsu, despite his knowledge of the Kage Bunshin method and its speedy learning. Naruto nodded and looked up at Jiraiya. The latter wished the child good fortune as he said. Tsunade was taken aback when he heard the question, "Do you still have time to do this, sensei?" "My name is Jiraiya." The voice of Hiruzen's determination left Tsunade feeling shivering, as we had already discussed this. She asked, "What are you two planning?" with suspicion. "What's the story?" "Go, Naruto." Jiraiya declined her query and instructed his godson to start sealing. "This time, Naruto doesn't have any double agendas," he said, standing in front of the Kyuubi within his mind and looking at him with more than a hint of suspicion. "According to my assurance, I aided in changing Shikaku's dishonorable seal, but you still cause me pain," Naruto exclaimed. "Inform me that you're not going to tamper with my seal this time around." The demonic Kitsune sighed. "In addition, I plan to minimize the amount of pressure that my chakra will exert on that senseless seal. I have not broken my pledge last time, as I followed through with Shikaku's orders and stopped doing it." The bijou quipped with a dark expression, acknowledging that you were not aware of the additional harm it would cause. Naruto's expression was a hint that she underestimated the severity of his condition. "Despite uttering words of pride about your disdain for those who deceived and lied, you still managed to do something underhanded." Naruto responded with a sense of relief, acknowledging that the demon had done something similar to humans and caused him pain. "I require the chakra to bring me out of this state. I owe Gaara the task of fixing his seal before you destroy mine. Although I may not be able to save him, I can still make sure he has a happy life." Tisk. "It's in your possession, okay?" The irritated demon cautioned against excessive waste and suggested that the less use of it, the damage to the creature's seal would be minimal. "After pulling, I'll use up my dick as much as I can." Naruto's gaze remained imperceptible as he looked up, his disgust and distrustful. "In the same way, I am a simple human. The kid is tough, and I must give it to him. The most bothersome aspect of the situation is that it was deceptive, as Kyuubi felt somewhat remorseful. He was annoyed to learn that the help he promised Naruto during his fight with the Ichiboji had been primarily for self-defense, not personal gain. Although not deceptive, the act was deemed more human than Kurama had suggested. As Sabaka no Gaara remained still, his brother in burden's eyes changed color. Gaara would have been already frightened by the sudden appearance of the Crimson Chakra, which was worse today due to the Ichibi's reaction. Shikaku's fear was escalating, and it wasn't just him. Naruto's fate would be determined by the success he had attained with this seal. The Ichibi's survival depends on the successful insertion of the keyhole in the new seal. If anything went wrong, he was in danger of losing his seal and the Ichibi would be set free. Failure to insert the new element would result in the Ichibi's chakra gathering until it reached a point where the seal would collapse under force, potentially leading to death. The demon would take control of Gaara again if the new element failed to fit or work properly, resulting in the seal becoming weak. Gaara believed that death would be a preferable outcome. Nevertheless, in the event of success, Gaara could manipulate the Ichibi's chakra to some extent, discharging its excess chakra in a controlled manner. By doing so, Gaara would have become one of Tsunagekyu's most powerful shinobi and could be an invaluable asset to his village. Considering the fact that there is someone who could control an entire desert, why would any lunatic choose to attack a village in the middle of the desert as if they were their only option? It would be ill-advised and Gaara would take all its people. Baki made it clear that if Gaara were to die soon after the Kazekage's death, other nations would likely attempt to attack Tsunagekyo sooner rather than later, as there was only a limited time left for the Ichibi to respawn. Naruto advised against moving or modifying one's chakra, repeating, "Don't do it. Are you okay with me letting Temari know that I unintentionally caused your death by sneezing?" "Good." The warning given by Naruto to Gaara would have been a pain in the neck, but it wouldn't have helped him in any way. Chakra was present in his body. Chakras are hot, enveloping and warm. He felt something liquefy, and Gaara tried to stop the scream down his throat by clenching his teeth as it ran through him like liquid fire. Gaara had been unaware of pain for years, and although his defenses were strange, they never reacted. Was it possible that Naruto had temporarily concealed that? Gaara was unaware of this. At this juncture, he was not particularly concerned or interested. "Don't go," Naruto warned Gaara, utterly unaware of the pain she would endure. Gaara would only have to bear the pain if it came to him, as it was the least expensive expense. Naruto was aware that regulating the chakra's influx could have resulted in less pain, but due to an unusual circumstance, Hiruzen and Jiraiya were convinced that Naruto would expedite the sealing. Naruto paid close attention as the ink sketches he had drawn started to appear. The symbols moved in a manner similar to tiny silver snakes, moving along the paths Naruto had directed them to follow, directly into the seal he had placed on Gaara during the final stage of the Chunin exams. While Naruto's focus was mostly on the seal, his thoughts indicated that everything is going smoothly. A slight decrease in focus can be lethal at this stage. It was imperative that everything be in order to succeed. Maintaining the same balance between his and the Kyuubi's chakra as he had during the first sealing was the most challenging aspect. The sealing required an infinite flow of chakra, which made balancing impossible. How is it possible for a small item to require an extensive amount of chakra? Sweat drops started appearing on his forehead, and Naruto felt just as exhausted as he did when observing Gaara pant with sweat droplets. Jiraiya's presence prevented Naruto from falling to the ground as his shoulders lurched. Naruto's response to God Amy was one of reluctance, with a slight, but unwavering smile, as he asked. "Irokage-sama, of course," he boasted. "If you're a genius like me, how can I be so stupid?" Naruto replied. Naruto tried to soothe the aching stomach pain with his gaze as he asked, "Are you fine?" Was it Anko, Tsunade, or both asking, "Oi, answer me dammit"? Naruto couldn't recall which one. He was too worn out. It seemed as though his stomach had caught fire. It was as if his physique was disintegrating. Naruto's expression, "Fine," was pronounced with gusto as he gasped. "I'm not concerned about it. Give me the scroll." Jiraiya scowled, "Yeah, I'll let you take my own life," and the two women gasped in response. "You thought I might not check your backup?" Naruto growled. "Give me the blazing scroll, grab Gaara, and start typing away. It's time to move on." "We are in hell," Anko snapped. Naruto was drawn to Tsunade's almost whimpery voice, which made him think, "Don't believe we're going to dash." Hiruzen instructed Rodriguez and Anko to lead Gaara to the living quarters on the mountainside. Rato's gesture of, "but dash," to Anko led him to retort by touching the snake mistress' shoulder and shaking his head. The Tokubetsu Jonin, who was scarred, expressed his gratitude by saying, "Sandame-sama, it was an honor." "Rato," Hiruzen smiled, saying quietly, "Rato, this is an honor." With a bewildered look on his face, Anko looked on. "If you were to listen to the last counsel of this egotistical man, please avoid repeating his error. Let's go, Rato. Not solely for the village, not for duty, but also for your own happiness and personal fulfillment." The old man caught sight as Rato blinked and glanced at him. The stoic man gave a candid answer, saying, I will do what you tell me." To be honest, he was aware that such an undertaking would be challenging for him. Despite its impossibility, it went against all the customary traits in his personality, leading Genma to joke that he was the only bug-free Aburame in the village. "Anko might have something to teach you," laughed Hiruzen. Rato aimed at the Hokage whom he had been serving for an extended period, while lifting Gaara who was still struggling to move and suffering. He obeyed orders and jumped away, always following orders. Hiruzen was still in a state of confusion when Anko looked at him, but then she shrugged and followed after Rato. Naruto was apprehensive as Tsunade's voice had an air of authority when asked, "What are you playing at?" Jiraiya whispered, "Shiki Fujin." He put to bed Naruto who was almost paralyzed, and took off the dark green kimono that enveloped the boy's stomach. Tsunade observed the seal on Naruto, glistening like a feverish wound, and felt her body's freeze when she realized what was happening. "You can't," she cried out in despair. Hiruzen's benevolent declaration, "I can, I will, and I must," marked the end of any potential dispute. Jiraiya reacted by telling Tsunade to "don't, Heim," and then took hold of the armband. "There's no way this can be stopped, even with your best intentions. I put forth my utmost effort, which is significantly more than what you can even attempt, given that Fuinjutsu is a martial art. Jiraiya, it's unacceptable for you to let this happen. What do you plan on doing now, old man?" Naruto moaned. "I cannot keep the fox from getting out of my hands for an extended period. I committed the ultimate act of suicide, but why can't you let me do it? I'd rather take that savage and harm my family instead. You'll be with me for as long as I can, and you're going to live without any physical restrictions, at least until the end of your life. Uzumaki Naruto, what's the deal with by time? My jutsu will result in death, but it will also enhance your seal." The Kyuubi's sudden push towards releasing as much chakra as possible left Naruto feeling embarrassed and in pain. Naruto's ability to hold his own was almost non-existent. Jiraiya wanted to kill and mutilate himself and destroy the evil village that had never been established. He also saw Naruto's bright red eyes and placed a paper tag on his head. Subsequently, Naruto felt a sense of relief, as he regained control of his chakra and body. "What's up?" he muttered, but then asked why the Kyuubi was going into a frenzy of panic when he finally caught his breath for the second time. Hiruzen expressed his gratitude for scaring the strongest of the Bijou in his final moments, stating that, "it has probably caught onto my actions." Minato utilized the Shiki Fujin as the seal to enclose the Kyuubi in you. Its prison was designed as the Hak Fuin, but the Shiki Fujin was its source of strength. As the name suggests, a dead demon-eating seal is supported by the power of the Shinigami. However, its assistance comes with a price tag. Naruto stated, "You're going to kill yourself," and he realized this quickly. The truth was so clear that he didn't even need to see the tears drip from Tsunade's chin. The boy was told by Hiruzen, "Don't be upset about it. Orochimaru's actions were a clear indication of his impending death, and I am now at fault for many of the unfortunate events that took place. I am willing to pay a small price to repent for the last few days that I have lost. Ji-san, I don't want you to, for me, not like this. No. The future of Konoha is indebted to you. You faced challenges that would quickly cause others to fall apart. For years you were shunned by a village that could not comprehend the price you paid for their defiance. Despite the slow decay of your seal, you endured the hatred of the demon inside you, making contact with everyone around you. Naruto, I am aware that you will excel as a Hokage beyond what I have ever achieved. It's important that you avoid making the same mistake as me. The same applies to all three of you," as Hiruzen looked back at his former students. Do not limit your thinking to the small details. Refrain from assuming the means when accomplishing something. The world is not the entirety of Konoha, but rather a segment of it. Our village was established by Shodame-sama to bring an end to wars, not to continue waging war on a larger scale. Keep in mind that the professor, Sarutobi Hiruzen, the god of Shinobi, was observed by the wide-eyed blonde as he performed his final hand seals. The seals were so unexpected that Naruto couldn't even detect them, and Jiraiya pressed his shoulder. Naruto observed the sad expression on his godfather's face, which was unusual for a man who is usually known for his humor. Shiki Fujin, a cry heard from Hiruzen, grimaced due to the strain it caused on his delicate body. Casting it cost more chakra than he had anticipated. Did his reserves have dwindled beyond what was initially apparent? Despite the seal being on Naruto's hand, Hiruzen was visible to him when his hand touched it. Naruto's focus was not solely on the Shinigami, but also other aspects. Hiruzen's image floated in front of it. Naruto, be strong, Hiruzen whispered to his listener. Stay strong and fight for your well-being. Change the world and make it a better place. The ultimate aim for a shinobi would be to reach that goal. Don't make false assumptions about yourself by believing that strength or skill is insignificant. The world is transformed by a truly great shinobi, who can help the next generation to improve their lives. We are merely a means, not the end point. Our role in life is just a transition for those who are born after us, as part of an unending cycle of existence. Mr. Abdallah, I swear to myself that I will. I swear on my life with words. Never again sacrifice your life as much as you did just now. With what little of my life remains, you are no longer solely responsible for your own self. Give me a sense of pride and give me hope. The Shinigami displayed an unreadable symbol on his arm, then plunged its hand into Sarutobi Hiruzen's soul. The sight of blood streaming from her teacher's mouth caused Tsunade to cling to the tears as she watched. Naruto reacted with fury upon hearing the cold hand of death touching him. Naruto's chakra was the most surreal feeling he had ever experienced. This chakra was so unlike that the Kyuubi were almost inhuman. Naruto understood that this was the reason why Hiruzen had to perform this particular jutsu. Just like Naruto's approach to enlightening Gaara, the same chakra could be used to strengthen or modify his seal without any risks, as it was also utilized by Yondaime to empower the original design. To put it simply, the seal's repair could only be done by those with knowledge of Shiki Fujin. Due to this reason, Hiruzen claimed that he was the only one who could assist him, as a result of being unaware of the forbidden martial art spoken by him and Minato. The determined grimace on Hiruzen's face transformed into a serene smile as time passed. The Shinigami revealed that the old man had given up all his chakras, even the final one. The contract stated that Naruto's seal was reinforced, becoming stronger than it had been for several years. Upon finishing the seal, Hiruzen was surprised to discover that he had already accomplished it. Many elements were never fully drawn out. The details were concealed, except for their connection to the Shinigami, which is responsible for the seal's energy. Hiruzen wondered why Minato was not given the opportunity to complete the jutsu, but admitted that he had prior knowledge of the Shiki Fujin and Hak Fuin. He saw the Shinigami's Tanto moving down, and it was about to entice him into its belly. This was the place where Hiruzen had to live for eternity, which was also the price he paid to secure Konoha with a brighter future. Minato was interrupted by someone while sealing the Q, and Shinigami gasped before claiming his soul. The dead god of Shinobi, Sarutobi Hiruzen, fell forward into Jiraiya's arms. While holding his sensei, the Sennin wept with tears. He had reacted like a father to the man during his childhood, when he was an orphan but talented and poor. He whispered, "Rest in peace, old man." He was aware that there would be ample time to contemplate the man's final words. What was the significance of his statement about Minato being interrupted during the sealing ceremony? "Asuma, Kurenai, I know you're there, just come forth." Asuma, with Kurenai's support, stumbled and appeared unsteady. Despite Hiruzen's explanation to stay home, they had not followed through. How was it possible for them? Kurenai's mastery of genjutsu made hiding an easy task. Asuma cried out, "You are a stubborn old man. Why did you have to be so honorable towards the end? Goodbye, Dad." Kurenai embraced Asuma, tears welling up. The rings they exchanged in a small and intimate ceremony just 2 days ago are now intertwined between their hands. Naruto failed to notice them. Without realizing the 4 grieving adults around him, he gazed up into the heavens. He was unable to cry, unlike them. He was unable to let his emotions control him. He genuinely wanted to, but in reality, he couldn't do it. He was impeded by something. There was something that brought the tears to a stop. His heart was shattered like 1,000 needles, yet he couldn't seem to tear up his eyes. "Say farewell to the elderly man, please. I am grateful for your help. Everything is subject to change. For supporting me during times of difficulty. You were never held accountable for anything that occurred to me, as I made it clear. How could I? With the exception of Ero Sennin, you were the only one looking after me. Until Hinata-chan discovered me, before I met Haruki in AKO, only you two recognized my existence. What caused me to not love you as a family member? Why did you think I was going to be called my Ji-san? You were a great Hokage, and I couldn't have expected to be better like you. Soon after the first shedding of tears, many more were shed. The Sandaime Hokage of Konoha, Sarutobi Hiruzen, has died. Naruto was granted a peaceful state of mind by him, which he later discovered. The Kyuubi's disdain no longer impacted his every thought and emotion. Naruto was set free by the authorities. Once again, he was in control. Once again, the influence that had penetrated him was sealed away as the demon's prison was reinforced. Sarutobi Hiruzen's passing allowed Naruto to gain strength and become capable of resisting the Kyuubi no Yoko forces. Naruto had been given time by Sarutobi Hiruzen to develop his abilities, free from the clutches of the fox, and become stronger. Naruto vowed to repay the sacrifice, regardless of its cost, as he would never forget it. I will make the world a better place, Ji-san. No matter the price, the next generation will inherit a world of peace. It is the assurance of a long life. 2 lifelong experiences. Tenten, walking on the familiar path through the forest line, frowned at the sight in front of her. Tenten observed many Narutos on the large pond as she passed by the torii that led to the Uzumaki compound. The bridges crossing the pond were connected by a wooden platform in the center, which was where Mitarashi Enko stood, and he was filled with happiness. Target practice, a copy expressed, was heard as one of the copies leapt onto the bridge. The Uzumaki clan symbol was on his black shirt, which had been soaked with water. The odor, even though they were several meters apart, made Tenten suspicious of the pond below, which was not caused by sweat. She hollered and muttered about boys and senseless training methods. A little, Naruto said, scowling. After dealing with Sasuke, I figured I needed to speed up. Despite being told that I couldn't use the Kage Bunshin, it was still me who had to learn from this bastard. Luckily, Enko is not so sure, and I'm wondering if he should be called friendly. I'll be honest, she's a nice person and even helped me out before I needed any help. My new limits on the number of chakras I possess have not only been tested but also provided me with greater experience in evading attacks. Despite the fact that I cannot enhance my physical speed in this manner. The older Kunoichi appeared to be happy with his ability to kill off an endless supply of clones, as Tenten commented. As for Kleina, it's a little bit of everything. The blonde's head was covered with a sweat drop and she expressed her preference for blowing off the steam instead of continuing with her crazy efforts to make Rado more outgoing. Enko's methods, which typically involved pain or snakes, did not seem to be linked to her stated goals. She is displeased that she has not tortured or interrogated anyone, and now she seeks to take it out on us. At least on Rado. Despite being told not to, Kurinai-sensei won't permit her to touch any of us, and Enko lacks the ability to predict when it is appropriate to let Akeo-chan do something. Before entering the temple, the clone suggested that boss knock on the front door to prevent him from doing something crazy again. It's likely that the irate snake lady is going to pop one of my brothers before you arrive, so boss will be aware of your arrival. Are you alone with Enko? No, really? As they accompany Yamato and Rado up the mountain, Gaara performs chakra control exercises. Temari has enlisted some of my fellow players to instruct us on how to enhance our futon jutsus. What the hell is my futon jutsus? If we are all the same, then who cares? The clone found it amusing that Karen is having fun with Kurinai-sensei and other members of the group, who have undergone extensive training. Sensei, do you think it's necessary for us to? Karen muttered. Of course, Kurinai replied with a frown. Although Kiba and Hinata are having a good time, you should still focus on improving your endurance. You can recover faster than we can, at least, Kiba muttered. Although, it was just a warm-up. Akamaru exclaimed softly and proceeded to walk over to Uzumaki, who had already suffered from depression. Hinata reassured her, "Karen-san, I believe you'll get better soon." Karen's lack of confidence could be understood by anyone, including Hinata. Being genin required us to adjust our training regimen for the first time. "Yeah, please." Katrin sighed as she mentioned that Konoha trains her genin with more intensity than Kusa. "Let's proceed, otherwise we can't." Kurenai smiled as she admired the hard work and determination of her penis. Over the years, she had witnessed many shinobi individuals lose motivation after failing their exams. After experiencing such a setback, not everyone had the motivation to keep going, and many people lost their innocent thoughts on what it meant to be shinobi. The majority of genitalia entered the examinations with an idealistic mindset towards their careers, and were not shielded from the harsh conditions that often plague the weakest and most inept individuals during the initial rounds. Tenten heard a voice before she knocked on the door that closed the Uzumaki mask storage temple and was told to enter. "You've been a part of the Hyuga for an extended period, right?" Tenten inquired, heading towards the main hall. The girl was taken aback by Naruto's response, "No thanks, but I had put up many barriers around this place to make sure somebody was in front of the door." 2 sizable tables had been erected in the main hall, and their tops were not visible due to the abundance of books and scrolls on display. "What the hell is this bomb? Or a tornado?" Naruto's response was one of confusion, prompting him to ask why. "I had to research Gaara's ceiling, but with Ako and the others not frequenting my room, I usually just clean it because he gets mad when I don't do anything else." Despite her seeming calmness, she can be quite strict with others. "They're frightened. Can you spot those masks?" Naruto glanced at the podium, where Oni masks were positioned beneath 3 Uzumaki clan symbols that were connected. "Those things are quite hazardous. I have erected barriers around this area, even though it is within the boundaries of this compound." Tenten observed that something was awry about those things. She was actually frightened by what they did. As if the demonic figures were actual beings, they gazed at her. Naruto smiled as he saw the girl step back and take a deep breath. "They're not a bite, so don't be anxious." "What are those things?" Naruto's response was one of uncertainty, and she chuckled when she looked him in the eye. "Those things are my business, and I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I don't want to risk my life." While Naruto's expression was uncertain, some felt like they could contaminate my soul, while others were an assurance of unending agony. "I must carefully examine the seals etched on the masks before I can carry out any kind of activity. Only those who don't scare me are included in this. The extremely weak ones. I'm not going to touch them for 100 million ryo." Tenten appeared slightly pale. Regardless of what scared Naruto, who was unaffected even when confronting a bijou, there was something that went beyond her comfort zone. After searching through a stack of scrolls on the table, Naruto finally succeeded in finding what he was seeking. He hurled it towards Tenten, saying, "Here, here. It's like a weight seal, but with multiple presets that you can switch between when activated, making it easier to apply to your weapons." Tenten glared at the blonde with an uncontrollable look. "In the finals, you utilized a similar strategy to defeat Shino and come out on top. The current version is slightly more sophisticated. I was under the impression that you would find it enjoyable to use as a bokujutsu accompaniment. Most of your weapons come with a seal that can be applied." Naruto pondered, "Well, I suppose it's just throwing weapons, don't worry. That's a more reasonable assessment than mine. It's your specialty, after all." Naruto's gift of a jutsu had made Tenten feel awkward, as she didn't even ask for anything in return. With a wide smile, Naruto replied, "No worries." The boy's transformation left Tenten temporarily in shock, as she couldn't fathom how much he had transformed. He no longer had that peculiar gaze, as if he had some kind of suspicion over the entire world. He had a cheerful sparkle in his blue eyes, which was too captivating to ignore. What's the status of bushy brows, Niji, and bushier brows sensei? Tenten sighed. Training is ongoing. You've brought Lee's flames of youth to the forefront, which are now more intense than ever since you defeated him. I had to leave for a while because I couldn't bear Guy-sensei's constant frenzy about youth. Niji's character has undergone significant changes, as evidenced by his recent actions. Despite the impact of his father's death, he still spends a lot of time with us now, as per her words. The loss of his loved ones made Naruto look disheartened, but Tenten pointed out that despite the latter's cheerfulness, Naruki was still a reflective person. The pain he is experiencing now would have been much more severe than that. What did you do to him? What happened? He responded, he was very vehemently opposed to his family, and none of them liked him. Guy-sensei was so angry that he contemplated taking him out of the exams, citing his inability to advance beyond Niji. When you confront him, he suddenly addresses Hinata as Tsama, but without any of his usual sarcasm or melancholic tone. He went to the party on your birthday and it was almost unusual for him. Niji was tainted by the circumstances and engaged in actions that are typically expected of him. I was persuaded by Hinata to remove him from the path he was on. If it were up to me at that point, I would have resorted to killing him for his actions during the preliminary rounds. Hinata demonstrated that my convictions were as flawed as Niji's. The emergence of hate is not an unfounded phenomenon. I was just battling the symptoms, but Hinata taught me that it is much more efficient to confront the root cause. What's up there? Tenten scowled. You've messed up the main and branch business of the Hyuga clan, right? She blurted. Naruto's eyes met her, and she affirmed his trustworthiness by saying, I won't lie and deny it, but I will never disclose my ability to do that. If I were to manipulate the Hyuga's caged bird seal system, they wouldn't be pleased. The Hyuga clan's influence makes it unlikely that anything less could spark civil wars. Tenten smooched and couldn't express his thoughts fully except for a nod. I am aware that Lee and Guy-sensei would not question his actions, and they accept it as a positive change. Naruto's expression was, but you're too curious, and he smiled at it. You'd be asking for answers. This secret must be revealed by Niji before he can give the truthful answer. Knowing him, I suspect his reaction would be somewhat disrespectful. You can understand why he was so unfeeling about it. It's possible that someone else could also be a candidate. It's not something I enjoy. Tenten mumbled, there's no hiding the stupidity of secrets. We're shinobi. It's not feasible to resolve all our conflicts by focusing on the most damaging punch. It's not true, but the clandestine things are a fundamental part of our lives. It's my opinion that it could be less complicated to simply tear things apart at times. It's not realistic to expect people to transform after just one conversation. Naruto shrugged off the idea that it would be completely unfeasible. He proceeded to the opposite side of the hall and removed his bow staff. I haven't received training in Bojutsu until the Jisan rehabilitated my seal, can you please advise me on how to proceed? Alright, I have a question about the differentiating elemental types of chakra for barrier seal conductors, but we can handle that later. Naruto's predatory smile caused her to pause momentarily, but she still had the guts to let out some anger. Hey, I'm being treated like nobody's business these days, he said as his shoulders slumped from mostly, artificial depression. Tenten chuckled, we're just trying to cheer you on. Your recent attitude, which has been less concerning, also encourages it. We can mess with you without making your eyes appear red. Isn't being bullied a side effect of getting my seal fixed, rather than the Kyuubi panting on your backside? According to Naruto, Jiraiya-sama's statement about Sandaime Samura bolstering his seal before dying is accurate. The Kyuubi's strength caused my seal to experience damage over the years. The effort put in by Gaara to prevent his release of the Ichibi during Konoha only added to my distress. As I used more of my chakra, my seal deteriorated to the point where it became difficult to maintain my balance. Ji-san repaired the damage and enhanced the seal's strength beyond any previous attempt. Nevertheless, will the people be afraid now? I'm aware that you previously confided in me about your Jinchuriki identity. My request was to make my demands known to the world and remove the laws that prevented it from being discussed. The majority of adults were aware of it. I conveyed to everyone that it was important to me regarding it. Those who are unaware at this time would be more damaging to me due to their lack of knowledge. Naruto shrugged off any doubts that the people who want to hate him would at least hate them for doing the right thing. The Sandaime family's Godame has made their last will known to the public after the funeral, which may indicate a greater emphasis on the sacrifice of an elderly person. He sighed and acknowledged that saving his buttocks was not the sole purpose. Gai-sensei stated that he had never heard anything more noble than this. He meant that the youthfulness elements had been eliminated, but not in a literal sense. It's possible that it could be said again. It's apparent that I'm forever grateful for his efforts in helping me. According to Naruto, he cannot help but feel sorry for Konohamaru. In the absence of me, his grandfather could have survived for at least another few weeks. Jiraiya-sama attributed the Kyuubi's defeat to their failure to contain them. The Kyuubi are too strong for even Yondaime's superhuman strength, wouldn't you agree? Although not very convincing, he smiled and thanked Tenten. What caused the Kyuubi to not complete the seal? What occurred on the night of my birth, and how could it have been completed? The incompleteness of the seal was not a result of Ero Sennin or Bachan's understanding of his mysterious last words. Despite this, Ero Sennin made a comment about the old suspicions that someone had manipulated the Kyuubi that night. Those suspicions and the Uchiha clan were mutually resolved. If you think about it, the idea is that it's weird. If all of them were annihilated in one night, as the stories suggest, then there was no Uchiha among them who had the power to control the Kyuubi. If not for the individual who killed the Uchiha. Itachi was too young for his age, and Tenten remarked, yeah, come on, without even realizing what had happened. I'm going to strike you with a little bit of force. I refuse to let you indulge in excess, she exclaimed. Nevertheless, she was slightly annoyed that she felt a blush creep on her face. If you were to be killed dozens of times every day, who would even consider going full emo? Naruto asked with a shuddering voice. Enko demanded that you remove all your clones. He then pinched his nose. Everyone has a piece of it. Unattached. It is one. With a terrifying fireball, because she ran out of kunai. You must be so insane, Naruto said. She is only really crazy when she's not sleeping or at the dango booth. In any other scenario, it is clear that the answer is yes. Chia is not denying that she has enough reasons to be mad. I think Enko's addiction to alcohol is the reason he is so mad. You are unfocused, the bird muttered, and Hinata's gaze caught its attention. Hinata muttered, sorry. Who is the boy that you are lucky enough to love? Twice as long as I'm not telling a lie, Suzaku quipped. Hinata was informed that she had to speak her mind after hearing the fact, not because of the being's strictness. I'm sorry, I was only worried about a friend and apologized. You desire him to surpass your friendship, don't you? Hinata's amused voice echoed beyond her own. You can say it without any hesitation. It's evident, my dearest. In defeat, Hinata lowered her head. He expressed, it's great. The loss of a significant individual affected Naruto-kun's life. Once more. I am somewhat uneasy about him. Death is a common experience in life, and it's an inevitable part of our journey. I'm curious, why do some people experience more suffering than others? Wouldn't it be more wrong to think that nature is not interested in the thoughts of human beings? Fairness and other concepts created by humans are not subject to shaping, but the world does not conform to human perception. The world must be observable by humans, not externally. In order to learn, you must be willing to let go of your ideas. It's important to be willing to question yourself in any way, even if you have a tendency to underestimate yourself. The bird stooped on its feathered friends and then leaped onto a tree branch nearby. Hitomi had decided not to start any training exercises near the Hyuga clan's compound, resulting in Hinata and Suzaku being located within the Uzumaki compound. Hinata had explained this logic to Suzaku, and the bird had only been amused when she told him not to worry if she wanted to be seen or was noticed. The focus of today's training was on chakra control, which aimed to make it undetectable. You have to refocus, child, and keep going. Yes, Suzaku-sama is right. As the young heiress closed her eyes, the bird watched and did as it was asked. Good news. Hitomi-chan's observation is accurate, stating that Hinata-chi had more potential than she realized. Despite having much more chakra reserves than Hinata, she is still unable to summon my actual body. I will only use this body as a substitute for hers until then. I may be perceived as the king of birds by humans, but this doesn't change the fact that other birds will comply with my demands. However, with a small amount of my chakra merging with this servant, I am able to see through its eyes and speak to those who are unable to summon me directly. The child's will could enable her to do it in a few years. Her minion looked at the young girl and realized that she had to correct some of her fighting style. Over the past century, Juken's art had deteriorated significantly. Those who are focused on power and their style is known as gentle fist. They inquired why I had not been summoned for such a long time, and Suzaku admitted to feeling sad, considering that the girl didn't perform as well as he had expected. Her natural inclination towards water came with the customary tendency of malleability. The thought of re-educating the girl was as daunting as she felt, especially considering her natural aptitude for earth. Despite the secrecy, I'm unsure if you're asking Enko-chan to marry you, Naruto replied with a smirk. Is there a document that contains nude pictures of her? Poof. The color of Rado changed to ruby red in an instant. I'll take a deep breath and realize that I've been had enough by now, said the scarred Tokubetsu Jonin, who couldn't help but admit to feeling sad about falling into something different. Karen chuckled completely as she ate the last of her ramen. Ah, that's a great response, Ni-san. I am declared, this ramen is the best I've ever had, as her father inquired. My brother isn't a pig. Karen replied softly, acknowledging that she had already eaten 5 bowls of noodles. I don't feel like I ever consume this much food again. It's their fault for making this fantastic product, she remarked, gesturing at the amusing Ayam. Ramen is the food of the gods, and Ichiraku, my grandfather, eats it every day. We need 2 more miso. Tucci replied with a smile. I'm already working on it, she said. It's safe to say that Ako-chan won't permit their daily presence on the ground, so we're not being overpowered. Ayam sighed, it's true. I won't last long if I have to make this much ramen every day, she said. Oh, more customers, she exclaimed as she walked towards the new entrance. Ichiraku's message read, Welcome to the shop, do you need time to decide or order? Well, I'll be back in 10 minutes, Rado replied. You two are both safe here. It's improbable that someone would attack you on this busy street. Naruto waved him off, saying, We'll manage without any issues. His enchanted voice conveyed, he needs to relax a bit. Enko has a point, doesn't she? He murmured, gazing at the disappearance of their guard. Karen said, Yup, I know. I don't think Rado-san will ever be willing to accept that. Naruto laughed at the mention of the stubborn mules. If they were to get married, what would be the outcome? Karen dropped her Enko and Rado chopsticks in surprise. They've never had any intention of killing each other before that, she mused. Naruto's behind was a mournful tone, conveying the truth to Kakashi-sensei. Naruto-san is known to spend a significant amount of time at this particular ramen restaurant. What's the reason behind that? That's something we're aware of, Sasuke declared. Good day, Naruto-san. Shino, why did Kakashi decide to pursue me? Don't you think you want to kill me again? Naruto asked, but it was not a playful answer. The presence of Sasuke in the story caused Naruto to lose his cheerful demeanor while consuming ramen, which was difficult for him to overcome. The last time they crossed paths was characterized by hostility. The corrosive chakra that Naruto had released on the same day did not appeal to Sasuke's nostalgic feelings. Shino remained patient and said, "We are here to apologize," despite Naruto's jab. "We were completely ignorant of your burden and the sacrifice you had to make for our community." I said, "I'm sorry, but you already knew that I was a Jinchuriki." Naruto then shrugged off the accusation. "In addition, you didn't criticize me for it, so there's no need to apologize. It would be an understatement to say sorry if I didn't inform you earlier." I can sympathize with Sakura's response to the wave mission, despite its lack of success. Even though Sakura was flinching, he appeared unashamed. "I didn't know what you were, but I saw you change and, deadbolt. I know, you weren't prepared to see a shinobi carrying out his duties, but Naruto still found time to care. He couldn't fathom what he had once wanted from this girl. She may refer to me as a what rather than the actual person I am, but this is not an accurate way to explain it. She is not deserving of sympathy points for this." Sakura was slightly irritated by Naruto's lack of effort and his unwillingness to disclose it. "We might have been told that the person in front of us carries the demon that destroyed half the village from 10 years ago. How would anyone feel about this? I don't want to be treated like an ordinary individual. Your disgust and fear have been with me ever since you saw me defend the villagers." "Sasuke mused about the idea of you and nothing else," she said. Naruto glared at him, acknowledging that being considered normal was everything he ever wished for. The Uchiha's intention was audible to him. Despite the Kyuubi's lack of power, this was quite apparent. "I'm here to indulge in ramen and avoid another foolish brawl. You've already damaged your reputation in Konoha, have you? I bet that the small gesture of courtesy was enough to avoid a more serious reprimand, but even those idiotic parents will grow weary of your behavior someday." Shino interrupted Sasuke to inform him that he is not present for combat. He turned to face the Uchiha, but they were silent. "He is here to express his apologies for the unjustified attack on you at the Uchiha compound." Naruto's laughter was so intense that he couldn't stop. The frown that Sasuke had deepened as his gaze widened. After the laughter, Naruto chuckled and expressed his regret, breathing deeply. "This is such a touching admission, I am filled with immense emotions. Kakashi sent you here for that reason, which is just as convincing as the infamous copy ninja." Karen wondered why she disliked Nii-san, but admitted that it was not possible for him to imitate another sensei. She then frowned at Sasuke's grimace upon reflection. Sakura said, "Ni-san," with a frown. "When did you realize you had family?" Naruto, but his face was mostly concealed. Shino reacted with discomfort and expressions of disgust. The question was not appropriate to ask an orphan, especially with their rude tone. "You don't seem to be a fan of Nii-san either." Karen inquired about the problem with the pinkette, despite being unaware that she is not his sister. She said, "But I don't care. The initial Uzumaki I've come across is Karen Nichan. She is my sister, at least from my point of view." Does Naruto's irritation make it difficult for him to concentrate on his ramen? "Shino, do you need a bowl? I have something to say about it." What is the reason behind Sakura's strong dislike for Sasuke-kun? Naruto's voice became cold as she exclaimed, "Wow, I wasn't the one who started to hit me. Reflect from your thoughts and focus on the present moment, rather than always siding with Sasuke. Don't be indifferent to the people around you, or else you will keep avoiding them due to your lack of awareness. It is ironic to me that you behave in this manner, even though you know what it feels like to not be acknowledged." Shino placed a hand on Sakura's shoulder before she could release the angry response. "I want to apologize, Naruto-san," he said. It seems like we made a mistake by coming here. Why is Sakura still mourning, while Sasuke remains too furious? Your inability to maintain a composure is disappointing me as well. I didn't mean to insult you, Shino, but I know that you are all forgetting me. Naruto questioned whether you thought you had kept your intentions hidden. Sakura can sense his fear clearly, and Sasuke may not have noticed his anger towards him due to his sensory abilities. It would have come as a surprise to you how perilous it is for an individual to be unable to maintain adequate seal management. Did you really think Orochimaru gave you something without any justification? His effect will be as severe on you as the Kyuubi's. That was the last thing Sasuke wanted to hear. The young Uchiha was filled with internal doubts and retreated, but his anger did not prevent him from leaving. Sakura followed Sasuke, who then walked away with a grimace on his face. I understand your disdain for Sasuke, but I find your behavior toward Sakura to be completely irrational. Naruto answered in a more conversational manner, what's the reason behind that? Sakura is presently feeling lost and disoriented, and suffering from intense stress. Shino explained that her mother's death occurred during the invasion, which is why she said it. She stated that her father was severely impaired by alcohol and passed away in an accident. Karenin realized that her tension was the reason for her tense state. Shino nodded as a sign of approval. Sakura struggles with her losses due to varying circumstances. I was oblivious to the fact. Naruto sighed, acknowledging that his behavior is still idiotic, even with the Kyuubi's constant distraction. I'll apologize for that at a later time, but for now, I'm sorry. I owe her that much, even if she doesn't want to hear it. Sasuke was cautioned by Naruto to be cautious. If I were to use my own hand to seal Orochimaru's wound, it would be a matter of choice for Sasuke. The cursed object's significant impact on him implies that Sasuke permits it to take place and tries to utilize its influence. Shino acknowledged that his preoccupation with power had become more prominent in recent times, after a brief period. He appears to be influenced by hate, rather than rationality. Naruto stated, I'm the final person to assess someone on that matter, with a grimace. If I were in the same situation, I'd hand it over to Kakashi. If he doesn't, refer the matter to the Hokage's attention. Shino acknowledged that Sensei had made several attempts to make sense of Sasuke's situation. He didn't like to talk behind the back of other people, especially his teammates, but this was also a concern for him. Furthermore, he recognized that Naruto is proficient in Fuinjutsu, and subsequently came to the conclusion that his understanding of it was rooted in his own experiences. Is it possible to use your Kikaichu to examine someone's chakra? Can you explain why this is so? If he is truly tapping into that seal, the composition of his chakra should change during training or combat situations. Perhaps, and this is the most irksome decision, the seal is making him unhappy. If you're closer to him than we are. I am unable to determine if he is being affected by the malice that's coming from that object, but I suspect it is. The way Sasuke dealt with his defeats made me a fan of him, which I could see in movies. His strength was always present, despite everything. Is it possible that my assessment was incorrect, or is the seal more hostile than usual? Shino contemplated it and nodded in agreement. I know that spying on my teammates is not ideal, but I must acknowledge that this is the most rational approach to analyzing the situation. Naruto-san, thank you for your suggestion. Now is the time for me to go on leave. The ramen we ordered before our arrival is starting to taste cold, so what's the reason? Naruto cried out in denial, saying, I'm sorry, I didn't order my ramen. In one moment it was clearly serious, but the next, with a childlike maturity. Karen giggled as she realized that her brother was a peculiar person, Nii-san. Kami has brought about a lot of changes, thank you. Naruto's expression spread as he looked up from his bowl with glee. Mihobi mwad na ra main suri, he said with a mouth full of ramen. Sorry, please, he asked. I was captivated by the Kyuubi. The feeling of intense hatred and constant anger that Gaara experienced is reminiscent of her insomnia. The expectation was high that I would encounter adversaries at every opportunity, so I created barriers and edifices to ensure safety. The Kyuubi's seal prevented us from doing that, but Naruto inquired if anyone else was present and then proceeded to whisper, what could be the problem? The Kyuubi were sealed within me by the Yondaime, but something interrupted him. Naruto stated that she would never know what happened on the night of her birth, as long as the fox doesn't want to discover the details. Despite everything, I still feel sorry for Sasuke. Although he is the most massive animal on Earth, I can at least sympathize with his agony. Regrettably, I understand his vexation. Is that why you cautioned Shino-san? Yup, right? Assuming my statement is true, the anger of Sasuke will make his actions more relatable to me. The presence of a cursed seal in his neck is making him more anxious than before. I'm curious about Sakura-san and Ino-san's perception of him, Karen muttered. He questioned, what's the word for me, and his mouth was already filled with ramen. Ayam-san may think that you like his ramen, but I'm not so sure. Don't waste any time trying to finish it, Nii sent. Sasuke escaped from the ramen section and quickly raced back to Konoha, jumping off the rooftops. It wasn't long before Sakura lost him. Despite thinking she was no longer bothersome lately, he had little desire to engage in conversation. Sasuke was frustrated, as if Dobe. Kakashi had already made him feel bad, but being dismissed for this reason was even worse. He sensed that he had reached his limit and the days were gloomy, witnessing his family and clan being massacred. The memories of bathing in blood and seeing the loved ones he cared for were painful. As the frustration with his own lack of progress intensified, he also felt that the memories had hurt him more than ever. I wished I had been more robust. At my age, Itachi was much stronger than he used to be. Even though the Dobe is sealed with a demon, he and Gaara remain highly elevated above me. The Inuzuka and Icebrat were just as annoying as the bad guys, who made me go crazy. Kakashi is hindering my progress. While jumping from the final rooftop, he noticed that Itachi's elderly cat was staring at him. The words are, shoot. Sasuke snapped at the vulnerable creature to go and annoy someone else. Sudo simply maintained a fixed gaze at the Uchiha, while Sasuke passed the feline and entered his dwelling. I have no other option but to go where. If I want to make Itachi proud of his actions and gain more power, I must agree to Orochimaru's offer. The sole way to escape is through this seal. The Dobe's presence, along with Kakashi, Shino, and Sakura, is inconsequential. I can't get any stronger without them, he murmured. It's causing me to be stuck on unhelpful missions. If I remain in this place, I will only become weaker. Sasuke reacted with anger by repeatedly kicking the couch. How can I be so concerned about anyone when I haven't even taken the time to grieve for my family? Sakura sighed as he saw him sprint away, seemingly out of nowhere, and flee. I should leave him alone since Sasuke-kun doesn't want to engage in conversation. Going home would not be a better choice, of course. The place only evoked memories, and they were painful. Therefore, she decided to wander around the village without any direction for a while. As I recall, so has my character. She confessed to having no aspiration and a lack of direction, which is why she didn't even attempt anything. Sasuke-kun is still so cold to me. I wonder why, in hindsight, she would have regretted leaving Shino like that. Despite his awkward nature in public, he had stood by her side during times when others seemed to be distancing themselves from her. With the loss of her parents, Shino was the only one who could talk to Sakura about her pain now that she had moved in with them. Her tendency was to cry or break things down into tiny fragments, and her emotions were primarily focused on despair and anger. Who is responsible for her actions? I have lost everything, and Kakashi-sensei doesn't even pay attention to me. Retainment. She scowled and exclaimed, I feel like an emotionless lunatic. I'm feeling incredibly empty now. What actions have I taken? Why did I aspire to become Shinobi? How come I didn't realize how awesome my life was before, while being around people like Sasuke-kun who were alone and constantly complaining about my parents' surveillance of me? She sniffed. We were, as she put it. It's possible that Naruto was accurate in his choice of words. I never made an effort to understand people. Given that Sasuke has been experiencing my pain for a long time, I can understand why he became so distant. The little one scowled and gazed up at the cloudy sky. Is it possible that I am in a state of confusion? It's likely that he is experiencing more pain than I am. How is it possible for him to be like that? Sakura expressed with a sorrowful expression. Her personality began to change somewhat in her own mind. Her mother's passing had left her voice mostly silent, but now it felt bittersweet. You've only just started to question whether his depiction was accurate. Sasuke-kun isn't as strong as you assumed. Naruto has also undergone adversity, so it's worth noting. He has also been alone. If Ino's statement is true, then he also has a better understanding of loss than most people. Let us not forget that he was infected with a demon on the day of his birth. You were the one who inquired if you were blind, astounded my inner thoughts. This is not limited to Naruto, but others as well. Lee-kun shared his story with you. The loss of his only family companion. Lee's lack of talent was not the same as that of us. Despite everything, he managed to survive. That's what the sensei was trying to convey. He is not interested in forgetting you. It's a statement that he never made. Is it just me or do you share the same view? You've stumbled, become angry, and then fled. Shino aided you in your endeavors. Lee aided you in your endeavors. You benefited from Ino's assistance. You can only witness Sasuke's disregard for you. If Sakura's actions are hurtful, it may be helpful to recognize that they also harm those who come into proximity to you. She whispered in her sleep, and silence ensued. After a long time, Sakura was left to wonder about her romantic feelings towards Sasuke, leaving her feeling hopeless. Why did Sakura feel the need to chase after Ino? Despite feeling so deeply pained, she remembered her father's words, "Our family is very expressive." It may be perceived as a weakness by some, but trust me, you're not deceived. For the first time in days, Sakura smiled at the thought that the weaklings are those who are not sensitive to their own feelings. Her desire to move on from her pain and grief was a foolish decision. It was a part of her life. If she had the desire to relinquish a portion of herself, it would be less painful. A blonde who was quite loud interrupted her, saying, "Hey, forehead. I've been searching for you all along. P-pig, but dash. You're my companion, and that's it for now. Tonight, we're having dinner at my place." Ino dragged the girl along on her wrist and tugged it against him, acknowledging that things may not have been ideal between them. Sakura was unsure if her lack of resistance against the blonde was due to exhaustion or indifference. It's time to take action, Hideo Dano, and prevent further incidents from unfolding. Hyuga Eiji maintained that he would be a menace. The elder Hyuga, who was a member of the clan's council, appeared as concerned as he did. At Ichiraku's house, Naruto encountered his former Team 7 colleagues for the second time in 2 days. Nevertheless, the other Hyuga elder had appealed to Eiji for alternative reasons. The Kyuubi brat has been removed from our premises. He migrated to what is speculated to be the grounds of his own clan, but I have never come across such a destination. I'm more interested in real estate, so that's why I smiled at you, Hyuga Hideo stated. The father of the clan's current leader began to lose interest in his tense and talkative associate. It's not that the brat is becoming the problem, but rather your daughter-in-law as well. Although I must admit, having that man on our grounds gave us a lot of political leverage. The boy's representation of his own identity is not a major concern, and no one wants to be offended by it. Even after that, the boy has remained a source of difficulty for us. Hajime's passing is just a case in point of how dangerous that brat can be. Is that something you don't know? Eiji growled. Nevertheless, that lady is being known for her sexiness. The way she looked at me was a mystery. You are also in the same boat as her. She has a feeling that something is off. Hideo's expression was one of grimacing. It is something I am familiar with. On the other hand, I am more worried that she started teaching her eldest daughter. The training's intricacy is the fact that no one knows what she has been trained in. My son appears to be unaware of the details. He acted as if his failure was important enough to make him care. He's the individual who put forth the idea of Hanabi being designated as the heir. If Hitomi had not objected to the proposal, Hideo's response was, "My eldest granddaughter is a threat as long as she is officially the heir." Despite my son's belief that she is emotionally incapable of assuming any responsibilities, you can definitely observe the minor changes in her behavior, just as much as I can. He may conclude that her development holds enough promise. After all, she is his firstborn. I cannot fathom being as visually impaired as you, Eiji modestly replied. The girl's growth was evident as she underwent the Chunin exams. Hideo's expression was a nod to his own behavior. An insincere man from the past is lacking in intelligence. The concerns I have are not related to the exams, but rather to Hitomi's covert training. In the end, if that girl attains the same level of intelligence as her mother, she would become a significant source of trouble. Unlike her younger sister, she would be hard to control. Hanabi is akin to Hayashi. If tradition had not dictated that I had to resign in favor of Hayashi when his fighting prowess exceeded my abilities, would have been in command over this entire situation. Despite this, Hayashi is easy to handle. The clan's record shows Hitomi as having more insight than any other member, but I was unable to uncover her true nature. I am not as bright as anyone else is, he admitted begrudgingly. Hideo acknowledged that he should not delay in marrying the girl, as it was one of his biggest mistakes. Will he continue to cooperate? After your son voted for the current Godame? That was a separate concern. We must not let the cowards take over the village. My son was correct in his decision, and I agree with him. However, he will still seek our assistance regardless of the circumstances. The clan has more power due to my possession of all the cards, which surpasses any previous position I held. Hideo boasted that he has the most comprehensive understanding of the Hyuga's strength among all the leaves. What significance would that hold for the roots of the tree carrying the leaflets, and how should we be mindful of this man? He is not a reliable source of information. Walking towards the former building, Temari looked elated and smiled. Her little brother and his fellow Jinchuriki were engaging in a brutal taijutsu sparring session on the mountain ridge, above the Uzumaki living quarters and the mask storage temple. Temari was aware of the presence of buildings in the area before the Kyubi's attack on Konoha. She had the opportunity to view a few remains. The barrier surrounding the Uzumaki compound made this open space the ideal training ground for them. Gaara's behavior was a sight that Temari had never witnessed before, as she stated. She witnessed the two boys squaring off, swinging fists, palms or feet. Despite its fierce nature, the spar was still carried off with a wide smile. At least in Naruto's case. Even from afar, Temari could see that her younger brother was enjoying himself. "Blondie, how did you end up here?" Temari was taken aback when the snake mistress spoke out from behind her. Temari scowled at the older kunoichi and stared at him. "When will you cease sneaking up on me? Although I told you that Kamatari was a weasel, not hamster, then what can be said about him?" Enko's response was one of disbelief and jealousy. "My pretty snakes eat everything, including weisels, hamsters, cats, and mice." Temari's attention was drawn to the sound of slapping, and she saw Rado with his hand in front of his head. His forehead continued to display a reddish mark left by his hand. I'm sure Temari-san is fine with me, but I don't mind her. Rado sighed in disbelief and acknowledged Enko's lack of intelligence. He proceeded, disregarding Enko's furious reaction. What is your reason for being here? You smacked his clones? Enko inquired. It's not a question, of course. The blonde shrugged and acknowledged that they had run out of chakra. It is not unexpected. After their seals were repaired, Gaara and Naruto indicated that they had a much lower amount of chakra at their disposal. Their chakra reserves have decreased, but their ability to control them has risen dramatically. Their superior shinobi abilities are likely due to this, in my opinion. They both have a lot to learn about control, however. Dutchman proved to be capable of stopping his sand from constantly defending him. It's only effective for Naruto, Rado sighed. Your snakes have failed to withstand the test of time. No way. Gaara glanced at his sister while walking away from the trio. Don't be distracted, Naruto warned him while delivering a rather brutal blow to the red-haired boy's head. In the past, the boy's hair was auburn, but after a previous accident caused ice to burn on top of his head, it turned into red hair. The fact that they were Jinchuriki meant that healing was not a concern for them, so neither of them felt particularly troubled. Why is my sister here? I ran out of my clones, Naruto said with a shrug. The Kyuubi's influence has been removed, allowing me to access less chakra. Nevertheless, I'm still getting used to things. Humans are not normal, Gaara declared, almost resolutely looking at his sister who had engaged in a heated argument with Enko. Despite his sharp senses, Naruto could only detect weasels and snakes in certain situations. We are referred to as monsters, but they have the ability to be more inhumane than we are. Despite the presence of evil, there is good in them. With a smile on his face, Naruto stated that he would not have been able to change himself without your sister. She was afraid of you, she didn't care. It's possible that you may have even disdained the way you were. Despite being a chibi herself, she maintained a strong love for the other person. Gaara agreed, sharing her still smiling face, that she was given a reason to live. Naruto was unable to resist agreeing with that. His friends and family provided him with reasons to live, such as the ability to endure any kind of hardship. In the final analysis, Hinata. I am still unable to grasp your intentions. I am certain that I cannot be correct. Is it possible for someone to like you and then reciprocate those feelings with me? Although it may take some time, I am committed to doing everything in my power to avoid any potential danger. I was given more time by Jizan, so I must give it my all. I will become strong enough to hold on to that savage fox in my grasp. Are you prepared for the next round? Gaara asked when Naruto's determined grimace was revealed, causing her to frown. Temari's determination was apparent to Gaara when he looked him in the eye. Likewise, he would go to great lengths to ensure the safety of those who were dear to him. He would not give any consideration to those who attempted to harm his valuable citizens, their blood would be a proper sacrifice for him. Rado shook his head in relief after witnessing the two kunoichi resume their sparring, but felt relieved as they continued to engage in more intense fighting. Gaara had no prior experience, but he was educated in all the techniques of his taijutsu style. In the interim, Naruto's manner was a bastardized version of the Juken. Rado was certain that Naruto frequently utilized his fiery claws in this manner. By making some adjustments, Rado had significantly enhanced the style of Naruto. His stances, attack patterns, and defense had all undergone significant refinement. Nevertheless, it was still disorganized, with the boy appearing to be imaginative in every action he took. Rado was not frightened. He agreed with the idea that the blonde would not be a taijutsu type. His vast chakra reserves would make him an exceptional ninjutsu expert, provided that he could improve his chakra control. Minato-sama integrated ninjutsu and taijutsu into their training. Rato squished his chin and admitted that Naruto's stamina would make him a better person, even though his father is still not very agile. The power of his mother is palpable. The boy's proficiency in the Raiton elemental jutsus would enable him to incorporate the Hiraishin into his style. Unless he stubbornly declines to learn his father's jutsu. Why did his mother instill him with that characteristic? D-ranks. I have a strong distaste for D-ranks. Kakashi disbanded Shino and Sakura for training, leaving Sasuke to handle the tasks themselves. He was aware that Sasuke's frustration would not be well received by Kakashi if he expressed his displeasure. Another dull speech would follow. Despite being assigned a D rank, the mission took them beyond the village. Even though it was within the safety zone, there wasn't a significant amount of concern expressed by any of them. Kakashi utilized these missions as a means to educate his students, while leaving Sasuke to handle the tasks. After all, Sasuke was sentenced to death. Had the council not ruled otherwise, Kakashi would have expelled Sasuke from the team. Despite being composed, the Jonin was becoming increasingly weary of Sasuke's furious anger. This was not the personality profile that would be appropriate for this role. Jiraiya and Hiruzen were in agreement, but the majority opted to believe in Sasuke's bloodline instead of acknowledging his own problems. Meanwhile, Shino was noticeably quieter than ever before. After seeing one of Shino's Kikaichu come back to him, Kakashi noticed that Aburame had a rather sad look on his face. The only thing he had said was, "I need to speak to you, sensei, after we have reported to Hokage-sama." In his relaxed state, Kakashi began to wonder what could possibly entice the otherwise unattractive genin to this extent. Looking back at the brooding Uchiha, who was moving behind the rest of the team, Kakashi had a creepy suspicion that Shino's request was all about Sasuke. Once more. The abundance of distractions made it difficult for him to see Shino add another headache to his already growing list. Despite his distraction, Aburame Shino was still in the process of deliberating on what to say to his sensei and the Hokage. The Kikaichu presented him with an irrefutable proof that Sasuke purposely opened his mouth shut on the cursed seal Orochimaru had left behind. It seemed that it was affecting his emotional state too. Sasuke-san will never understand the price tag for such power, he whispered, grimaced against the back of the collar that enveloped his mouth. What made him determine that it was worth the price? Shino's silence was overshadowed by his lack of action. It disturbed him that his teammate had made a deliberate decision to do what was being said. The boy's need for power was the only reason Shino could find any logical explanation for his actions. Why would you throw everything away for strength? Or maybe Kakashi didn't even notice the boy mumble. Sakura was too distracted to notice, and instead of following them, she was thinking more about her actions. Despite her lack of courage, she had not visited the cemetery since her father's burial. She was uncertain about whether she could have gone there and refused to invite Ino along. If she were to travel, she would prefer to be alone by her parents' graves, but she wasn't entirely sure. There was one of her longing to go there, and another shorting herself to escape that very same spot. It caused her to fall apart. Sasuke was not able to hear the mumblings of Aburame. He would have been too sidetracked if he hadn't been trailing behind the others. He possesses an incredible strength. I'm completely out of touch with my abilities. Throughout his time at the academy, he displayed strange fluctuations in his strength and skill that were constantly concealed. What was the reason behind Sasuke's inability to tell anyone if he was hiding the Kyuubi? Orochimaru's desire to kill was a joke, and the feeling of fear I felt during that time was not surprising. Sasuke had pondered his decision to go with the minions of Snake Sannin when he encountered them before. He looked at him and wondered how he could develop such immense power, given that Orochimaru is so strong, but Naruto has an incredible amount of power. The decision he made was the appropriate one. Kakashi had made it clear that he would not continue teaching Sasuke until his condition improved. The boy was of the opinion that he did not have enough time to wait for such nonsensical behavior. Sasuke's desire for greater power was fueled by his rivalry with Naruto in the end. He was left without anything in this village of fools. Despite his strange sense of companionship with Sakura and Shino, the young Uchiha was not inclined to stay put. It was strange, but Sasuke believed it felt like a family to be around those two people. Despite the fact that Sasuke's real family members cannot be reconciled with me until they seek retribution, how can she feel any compassion for anyone? Sasuke's Sharingan was activated subconsciously as a result of his anger towards his older brother. His team members were bombarded by Sanban that flew at them in perfect angles, causing them to fall within Kakashi's immediate vicinity. Despite the fact that it would have been impossible on a regular day, the Jonin were distracted and believed to be safe from anyone attacking them near the village. Sasuke's cry caused Kakashi and Shino to move in response. Despite her efforts, Sakura was left with multiple needles in her side. The pinkette fell to the floor in agony, causing her to appear unconscious and cry. Sasuke had a different perspective and didn't want to be perceived in that way. He was oblivious to the fact that it was his choice. He had witnessed the demise of numerous loved ones, and as a result, he declined to see another one. It must be poisoned, Sasuke said softly. He flashed his share, looking for their attackers. He was taken aback to see that one of their attackers was standing with him, much to his dismay. "Why did you tell them, fucktard?" the red-haired girl snapped at him. The six-armed teen surprised Sasuke by saying to him, "Taiyuya, calm down. You're focusing on getting rid of that bug guy, right? The Jonin is being delayed by Sakan, Yukon and the fat ass," Kadamaru recounted. "Get your slender ass behind you and dispose of any remaining waste, as our guys will need your assistance to be successful. You're aware that Kakashi is not a joke, right?" "I willingly agreed to the plan," Taiyuya replied. Three massive demon-like attackers, one of a near-giant size, emerged from the ground in front of them in an instant, ambushing Kakashi so quickly that the Jonin barely had time to reveal his Sharingan. Sasuke asked, "What's your job?" Kadamaru shrugged off the question, "Orders. You were taking too much time to make a decision, and we couldn't stay in Konoha forever, not even considering our friend as your next Hokage." Stupid was the term he used to describe him. "Are you going to have a difficult day or do you think you'll be okay?" Sasuke asked, uncertain about the outcome of the girl's discovery of her cursed seal. Sasuke recognized that Shino would be unable to confront her. How long will it take for Kakashi to overcome the seal's strength, given that the others have already put it into action? Afterward, take me to Orochimaru. I no longer care about the aftermath, my only concern is to have power. Kadamaru's response was solely a smirk of his own. "It's as easy as that," he quipped, gesturing. All of a sudden, he spilled sticky liquid. The material that was used in the Sanban from earlier was identical. Sasuke observed the chakra glowing within him with his Sharingan eye. While releasing the first level of his cursed seal, Kadamaru turned it into a bow. He made a second object. An arrow while the black markings crawled over the boy's skin. Sasuke aimed to inquire about the boy's intentions, but his eyes could detect it, yet his body was too slow. He observed Kadamaru retrieve the arrow, point it at him, and release it. Sasuke's heart felt like it had stopped beating. Time suddenly ceased to exist, and everything transpired slowly. The direction of the arrow was predicted by his Sharingan. Despite acknowledging the inevitable, he still began to move towards his teammate. Did the arrow fall short of his intended speed or was it too slow? He was unable to think. This was not something he wanted to see, and his teammates were not interested in it. He would be the one to bear the cost, not them. With a lackluster strike, the arrow hit Shino on the head. Taiyuya had attracted attention, but the boy had never witnessed the arrow coming towards him. The arrow was too strong for the few insects that were hovering behind him due to their weakness. The weapon's force was so strong that it could barely penetrate a hole. When it was too late, Sasuke closed his eyes to see what he just saw. The sight of Aburame's piercing arrow had already burned into his eyes, and Sasuke could have said no when asked if Kadamaru was present. A dagger, which was made from the same web-like material as the bow and arrow, was used to hold the Uchiha against its throat. With a grim expression on his face, Kadamaru asked, "You wanted power and you didn't care about the consequences. Are you fooling yourself, thinking that the consequences were solely yours? If you are willing to attempt to control the cursed seal given to you by our master, it will require more resolve than any other form of deception. Nevertheless, they are not. You didn't think you had to choose between power and everything else, did you? Are those trash pieces worth removing? Can you help me?" Sasuke's expression faded to silence. He hated it, but Kadamaru was right. This was his decision. He gave up on resisting. This was the route taken by an avenger. He had come to realize that it was a dark and deserted path, but he would have to endure it. "I regret not pursuing the opportunity to communicate with them earlier. I am entirely responsible for this. Had I not waited this long, they wouldn't have to suffer the consequences. I have no other choice but to take this action. Sorry, Sakura. It's my apologies to Shino. Kakashi, a word or two in English. It is necessary for me to accomplish this. Itachi's life is in danger, so I must put an end to it. Even if I am disregarded by others and accused of betraying my trust, I must seek revenge on my family." Kadamaru laughed with satisfaction upon seeing the expression in his eyes. "You have acknowledged the fact that it is bound to happen. Don't hesitate to reach out to me." Taiyuya, the predator who hunted Aburame Shino, moved silently past his body, snatching Hatake Kakashi, their most formidable foe. The Aburame's ability to force her to use the first level of her seal was causing her irritation. They underestimated his quality, but they were pleasantly surprised by how much better he turned out to be. She had a strong dislike for bugs and was passionate about them at the same time. It was a positive development that Kadamaru's arrow had managed to make it to that point quickly. After the Aburame's death, the creepy crawling insects had also dispersed. With caution, she moved closer to Kakashi and passed by the body of the girl with pink hair who had been killed by Senbon earlier that day. The girl was rendered powerless by the poison Kadamaru had applied to her Senbon, and she could only endure until someone cut off her throat. With Taiyuya standing beside the defenseless girl, the red-haired Kunoichi began to have doubts. It would be pointless to take the life of this useless fangirl, right? Taiyuya questioned. You can't see how she could have prevented Snake from doing it. Nevertheless, her instructions were unambiguous: terminate the entire team. I wouldn't have any problem with her being like me. She pondered the idea that the poison could last for a few hours, which would enable us to remove the anus. The lack of a search for these weaklings suggests that they will not be missed. The instructions were unambiguous: I had to put an end to this maniac. Despite the challenges that the girl faced, Taiyuya found comfort in watching the team over the past few weeks. Despite her parents' love for her, she spat on the ground and felt bitter about her own destiny. The green eyes, filled with fear, gazed upward and at Taiyuya's irritated dark brown eyes. Taiyuya scowled as she asked, "Would you choose to die or live?" Hatake Kakashi reacted to every attack with determination, wondering why he had made such a foolish move. The gray-haired Jonin was no longer familiar with these things. Having entered an ambush without any visible signs, this was his first time in years. The three demon-like attackers kept driving him deeper into the woods, causing him to be cut off from his own genus. Kakashi was unable to see Shino, but he had faith in the Aburame's ability to handle him. Shino's most recent encounter was with a girl he saw who had dark pink and almost red hair. He had a feeling that Shino could hold off any of these adversaries, but with Sakura's demise, Kakashi was aware that the youngster would soon be in trouble. Shino possessed an unusual feeling of loyalty and camaraderie. He never spoke much, but he would silently direct problems so people could come to him when they needed help. In the event of a life-threatening situation, the quiet boy was prepared to defend Sakura with all his might, even if another blow struck him. Despite being hidden under his mask, Kakashi grimaced as no one could see the message. Kakashi could not determine the identity of the big, red-skinned boy who had mastered the skill of pure power. Despite his modestness, Kakashi quickly comprehended that stopping such attacks was not the right decision to make. He realized that fighting him with the same raw physical power would require either an Akimichi or a taijutsu specialist like Guy. He is too slow to be a real threat, which is fortunate. The other two are more vexing than the first two. It's like they're urging me to strike them. Bizarre? The two smaller ones were almost indistinguishable. The horns on both individuals were pointed, but one was located on the left side of his forehead and the other on its right side. Despite their speed, they were still irritating enough to bother even those of Kakashi's level of proficiency. The confidence they exuded in their smiles was the most significant issue for Kakashi, and all three of them worked together flawlessly as a team. If I were to separate them, I could easily trap them with my Sharingan and remove them. Despite this, for some reason I feel it is better to avoid touching the smaller ones. They intentionally leave gaps for me to take advantage of. Kakashi pondered over the situation and found it to be unresolvable. The primary one should be eliminated first. I had no trouble tackling his Doton Jutsu earlier, but his massive hits are bothersome. Once he's out of the way, these two should be handled with ease. Kakashi launched a volley of kunai and then abruptly stopped dodging before initiating his counterattack. Yukon, who was only slightly faster, evaded the kunai but was forced to retract. On the flip side, Sakon sustained a significant cut to his shoulder blades. The two brothers were irritated and realized that Kakashi had just launched a barrage of fireballs at Jirobaroboan. The giant screamed in pain, "Fuck." Kakashi's chakra was disturbed before he could smile. The attack's power was lost as he lost momentum. Due to Jirobo's durability, the attack had a far less significant impact than Kakashi had anticipated. What was the reason behind Taiyuya's decision to create a second melody called Genjutsu, while concealing it in the woods? She was amazed that the Jonin was so difficult to catch. The one who caught Kazu would have been a threat to both him and the other. Her previous composition was capable of capturing almost everyone's attention, and with good reason. However, Kakashi had not been completely unperturbed by it. Taiyuya was not kept in the dark as she had hoped, asking, "How much experience do you have with this guy?" Using his Sharingan, Kakashi identified the source of the attack and proceeded to eliminate the nuisance. At that point in time, Kakashi made a significant error. Following his attempt to evade the kunai, Yukon cut off the back of their Jonin. The attack could have been prevented if Kakashi had sharp ears, but Yukonos were not concerned about it. Bullseye! Sakon roared with excitement. The Jonin's sudden movement towards Taiyuya left her feeling relieved, as she acknowledged the unexpected presence of both parties. The merging jutsu thingy's terrifying effects are too much for a Jonin to handle. The Kekkei Genkai of that fucktard may be the least attractive thing I've ever witnessed, but Kimimaro had to acknowledge that it was a useful ability. Kakashi witnessed the foreign chakra infiltrating the hand he had previously blocked Yukon's attack. Kakashi made a split-second decision, to take the risk and gamble. Let's hope that this man isn't the Rabido gene. This won't cause too much damage without hand seals. Chidori. The gleeful expressions of Sakon and Taiyuya were replaced with tears as the lightning bolt struck Kakashi's arm, leaving him feeling pain. Yukon's screams were loud but brief, and it was too late for him to escape. Having become paralyzed, he fell from Kakashi's arm and the Jonin showed no mercy. The burnt-out space where Yukon's heart had been was left after the Chidori, which had once covered his hand, flew through his chest. With his eyes wide, Sakon rushed forward as the injury was forgotten. After uttering his fallen brother's name, the boy went into a frenzy. Without any thought, he proceeded to fight with his screaming and angry face, without even stopping to think. The Jonin's distraction was the trigger for Taiyuya to begin playing the notes of her powerful genjutsu, including Mugen Onsa and Phantom Sound Chains. While trying to keep Sakan at a distance and repel Taiyuya's attempts to use her genjutsu to catch him, Kakashi realized too late that the shadow around him was rapidly growing. He was hit by a massive hand from above, which caused him to break through his barrier. Taiyuya kept playing her song afterwards. Despite having him, Kidamaru had already taken the Uchiha faggot away, making our mission a complete success. Despite successfully defeating one of Konoha's most notorious Jonins, Taiyuya was speechless and could not contain his expression. Nevertheless, she was never pleased. She loathed everything. "Leave this place free," she declared. "The Katan Jutsu has caused harm to the muscle mass, necessitating restraint." Sakan was still smoldering. "We have the faggot, and we should dash." The act of killing Kakashi would be a way to discredit the unhinged person. The speaker made it clear that Konoha was not capable of losing the individual, while Orochimaru-sama still needs to be punished for his geriatric behavior. "We've got the orders, so don't bother and get moving." Yukon was killed by him due to his own lack of intelligence. Kiba yelled, "What's up there?" and proceeded to ask. Our friend was present, he shouted several hours after Team 7 was ambushed. The sudden recall of Teams 8 and 10 led to their meeting, where they were asked to stay while their sensei had to report to Godame Hokage. Shikamaru was puzzled until he overheard Inoichi and his father discussing the possible cause of Hatake Kakashi's hospitalization. The Aburame clan was also in a state of panic, as you can see from the picture. Despite the absence of the Aburame clan from the hospital, Ino was visibly upset and expressed that Kato Shizun, Tsunade-sama's right hand, had refused to enter. The fact that she couldn't visit her friend and find out if Sakura was still alive left her feeling angry and frustrated. Shikamaru scowled, "It could be she's in critical condition or something else." "Sasuke hasn't spoken to anyone yet, Shino?" Hinata asked me. She remained silent since their reunion. In order to obtain information, Shikamaru had scattered the 6 of them throughout the village. The morgue was under the watchful eye of Hinata. Hinata's throat was drenched with tears when she saw I and Aburame Shibi entering the fight. Shino-kun is in trouble, with Karen embracing her teammate and trying to comfort the distressed girl. Akamaru yelled and placed his head on Kiba's lap, as he watched him slump to the ground. Shino had been a part of their team before they parted ways. The first team of 3 was made up of the original group of 8 members. Choji was equally surprised when he asked, "Shizumaru, this is untrue." For the first time, Shikamaru began to question if his friendly friend was not suitable for the job. The job description for Shinobi included death, but the Akimichi appeared too delicate to handle it. Although he didn't enjoy the idea of them all dying, Shikamaru was aware that their world would eventually come to an end. Shikamaru acknowledged that he didn't want Choji to become so hardened that it would be too much for him to handle. He even questioned whether he was ready for such things. He may have been logically aware of the possibility, but his heart held a different view. Shikamaru glowered, "I don't think I am capable of saving Choji or anyone else from such situations." He had to redirect his thoughts away from these feelings and towards the analytical part of his brain. Choji shook his head in response to Sasuke, and Karen shrugged it off. None of them had ever laid eyes on him. "I didn't sense anything. I have a feeling that Haruno-san was present for some time, but it was too insignificant to be certain. It is known to me that Kakashi, their sensei, is currently in the hospital. According to Karen, Tsunade-sama is present with him. According to Shikamaru, her senses were likened to those of a divine being. Against his best judgment, he inquired about Shino. "I've only had 2 encounters with him," Karen said, hesitantly. "I am unable to recall the pattern of his chakras, which I can only remember by guess." Aburame-san doesn't seem apparent to you, Niji remarked. The 6 men were approached by him, Rock Lee, and Tenten. Chia had directed them to the back alley in the middle of the village, where the 2 teams had met. We are the ones who. We formed Team 7. Lee's nodding and silent expression indicated that they had received very bad news. Shino had blood coming from his body, and Tenten grimaced as he saw an arrow. The team was first observed by Niji with his Byakugan, but Tenten was the first to get a close look at Aburame who had fallen. Despite having seen his lifeless body for the first time, she couldn't shake off the feeling that made her sick. Shino's life has come to an end. Kakashi? Sasuke-kun? Sakura? Ino pleaded. We took them to the hospital as soon as we could, with a speedy transfer. According to Niji, there were no indications of the Uchiha. Either Sasuke was taken into custody or fled. Tenten conceded that the ambush was a result of Kakashi's condition, with no explanation. The signs of the war were all pointed at that location. Shikamaru sighed and stated, there was an afterlife for Sasuke. He was frightened by this. The Sharingan and Dojutsu were both traded extensively in the black market, with their high value. The Uchiha clan's near extinction had resulted in an increase in their prices, which was absurdly high. The Sharingan is desired by the person who requests it. Kiba's head trembled as he played. Orochimaru, he growled. Oh Orochimaru, prompted Ino to gasp in response. Sasuke-san was given a seal by him, Hinata explained, explaining the event that occurred in the forest for death during the second part of the Chunin exams, up to Naruto's sealing. After Orochimaru placed a bizarre seal on Uchiha, Niji was shocked and said that he had been abducted. Orochimaru and Kakashi were fighting a different kind of jonin, which is why they didn't make the same mistake. Despite their strength, individuals like Orochimaru, Tsunade-sama, and Godame-samak are placed in a league above them. Moreover, that would clarify the burned corpse's nature as well, it was likely carried by someone who assaulted Team 7. He sent some of his henchmen to do the dirty work, said Shikamaru. In case he is after the Sharingan, they will transport him to a hospital as soon as possible to remove Sasuke's eyes. Ino's eyes shone, leaving Hinata and Niji equally horrified. The last 2 were heightened with the warning of being targeted for their eyes. Hinata had almost been taken as she was about to be snatched away. It was a day she would never forget, especially since it was the first time she met Naruto. Kiba grimaced, adding, when they get his eyes, they are probably going to throw him away. That's absolutely unacceptable. Shikamaru uttered to Inuzuka, who was furious and had no choice but to reject the situation. Hokage-sama must have recognized that if Orochimaru is involved in this situation, it would be reasonable for him to gather as many jonin as possible. At last, we were told to stay put, Niji nodded and remarked, he instructed us to wait. Kiba screamed, screw those orders. Shino was killed by those tawdy guys. Shikamaru sighed. What do you think we can do? This involves a shinobi who is significantly better than all the other 9 of us combined. Our chances are slim to none. Orochimaru was not the one who attacked Team 7, as Kiba questioned. Yes, that's right, Niji expressed. The tracks we discovered indicated that 2 or more of the attackers had been injured. Apart from the person who was electrocuted, there were at least 2 individuals who suffered blood loss. We can take them down, seek vengeance on Shino, and retrieve the Uchiha that was once theirs. Kiba exclaimed. Ino, you can show off your face as much as you want, but Sasuke has always been a reserved and unfeeling warrior. Despite everything, he remains our arrogant lad. We're not allowing someone to kill him for his eyes. Karen protested, but her fellow soldiers were unconvinced about the impropriety of leaving the village. Ino declared, we can't sit still and do nothing. We'll take him out of there. Shikamaru sighed and acknowledged the impossibility of doing anything for Sakura, but admitted it was only appropriate to do something for Sasuke-kun. It is a challenging task to handle. The Nara looked at Neji and then turned to Hinata and Karen. Okiba has his views, but what about you three? We need your Byakugan and senses if we want to find them. Neji utilized his Byakugan for a brief moment to reflect on the Nara's expression. He takes everything very seriously. Disturbingly. I thought he was completely unmotivated, but his anger goes beyond his physical appearance. Tenten took Neji's arm and gave him a fierce look. We cannot permit them to take our friends. It would be the most pathetic, Lee declared. Despite the disapproval of Gai-sensei, the speaker cautioned against blindly following orders and doing what their heart desires. Where is Naruto? We requested you to take us to him, but you brought us there, he said to the two other teams. Chie addressed Naruto in a respectful manner by mentioning that Naruto-sama, Dusty Two-Leg, and others are training, as part of his message. It was rare for her to show genuine respect towards him, and it was only during these moments when she did so. She had the honor of knowing that she could sense his struggle more clearly than most people, and that he saved her from the empty space that once was her life. I can't take you up there, Two Legs, but not when Scarface is paired with Two Legs and Crazy Snoopers are in the same place. She nodded at teams 8 and 10, taking you with me to them. They should have been informed about their deceased colleague. Tenten gasped in response to the question, did you know? You're in the wrong place at this moment, right? Chie stated that you had been conversing with each other since you were walking through the woods before entering the Uzumaki compound. As Chie explained, I've been following you ever since. Naruto would be a great help to us, Neji whispered, raising his eyebrow. Scarhead Two-Leg was the reason I came here, Chie expressing his frustration at the slow pace of others. She assumed that everything was already established, but it was necessary to clarify things further. The swift two-leg movement can be traced by the Whisker Two-Loop Trail, which is a common trait of White-Eyed Princess. Hinata gazed at the cat, questioning whether she was truly interested. Did Chie actually use her powers to turn Naruto into a puppet? It's your call, White-Eyed Princess Two-Leg, Chie said with reluctance. You can't force yourself to go, but if you do, you should be aware of the consequences. Shino-kun was killed, Hinata muttered, looking uneasy in response to the backlash she faced. I have no desire to get even, but Sasuke-san requires our support. The Jonin's inaction will necessitate our intervention. We can't do anything but track them down to where they hold Sasuke-san, and we will wait for reinforcements. Neji chuckled to herself, wondering if Naruto's words about Hinata-sama were still as profound as they were in the story. If you leave, I will be your guardian's shield, said Hinata-sama, who bowed down slightly. Tenten's typically stoic behavior had already changed, and she admitted to frowning. It would take some time for her to become more comfortable in her new role. Nevertheless, Naruto no longer saw him as a complete prostitute, and he was now more than capable of conveying his thoughts to the world. Choji and Ino nodded as Shikamaru looked at them. Who's in? Exactly? Hey, absolutely. Before they left, Neji bowed to Chie and whispered to him. Stay alert and release Naruto from danger. Despite being wounded, they were capable of taking down a Jonin. Whether they are ambushed or not, it indicates that they possess the same level of strength as a Chunin. The team must have both Naruto and Gaara on their side. The anger leads to a high number of errors. Neji nodded in agreement. Ironically, he was more aware of the extent to which blind hatred could be harmful than anyone else. He had learned a painful lesson from his own mistakes. His hatred for the main house would have been reinforced by his father's death before he battled Naruto, but Neji realized that it was not the entire main home. The number of individuals who committed the offense was limited. They would identify the guilty parties as a unit. Neji questioned why his father had been so misinformed, and when he looked back, many of his actions had become inconsequential, as they would have done more harm than good to the branch than the main house. Even though Niji could recall times when his father spoke differently, Hisashi had always been his dad, as he pointed out. Despite not being the most compassionate and nurturing father, he was among the few in their family who displayed such qualities. His father, Niji, was keen on demanding that those accountable for Hisashi's death be held accountable. Until now, his loyalty outweighed his hatred. The clan would remain unaffected if an individual was forced to pay for something other than what they were obliged to do. Providing assistance to Hinata in taking charge of the clan could result in liberation. Naruto's support made it possible to eliminate the caged bird seal, which was not an unattainable goal. She was the only way that allowed for freedom, and he would do everything in his power to ensure it. Niji had a strong connection to his father's older lessons, which were intended to benefit the clan. The black and white feline disappeared from a distance around the corner, as he gazed at her one last time. Yes, she would call for reinforcements. Despite his initial concerns, Niji was aware that the danger was not as significant as he had initially assumed, even when ignoring orders. Orochimaru was absent, and Niji had no faith in any of the manservants being able to defeat all three teams, particularly when accompanied by one or two Jinchuriki. Niji's weakness was still a source of pride. When his 4 guards stopped in the clearing, Sasuke's expression paled in agreement. Despite having only moved for an hour or two, they still had enough ground to cover. "Shut up, we're halting. We have to hurry, because Konoha will send squads to pick me up. Or else I'll rip your tongue apart." Kidamaru came forward, shouting, "Sakan," and positioned himself between the deranged-looking Sakan and their mission. Orochimaru-sama wishes to ensure that he is not injured. The reason behind it is known to everyone. Despite his silent speech, Sakan did not engage in any other activity except for spattering on the ground. Sasuke asked, "What's up?" "He wants your body." "What does he want?" "Dipshit." The red-haired girl growled at me. Seeing him shudder, she laughed in disgust. "No, not in that manner. He's a terrifying snake, and he has no interest in things like raping your thin ass. Your body is his primary focus, not yours. He'll provide an explanation shortly enough. Nevertheless, the cost is what you have to bear for making use of his gift. Is it necessary for me to pay? Your body will be consumed by the curse seal, one at a time. You'll die later, if you don't pay the price," Taiyuya murmured. Sasuke was really surprised when he heard, "I die." The seal had granted him immense power, but now it was causing his death. "If you can't manage it, then that's okay," Kidamaru replied. "Orochimaru-sama appears to believe that you can endure it. If not for that, he wouldn't have given you that seal." Sasuke reached for his feet and touched his own seal. "What's the big deal? You guys have something in common, right?" Kidamaru shrugged off the differences. "We are aware of its significance. The reason we kept waiting for you, Sasuke-sama?" Sasuke asked, "Who is Sama?" "I'm wondering what this means. If he scores you that particular mark, it means that you'll be the one to lead us." Kidamaru lowered his head and expressed his desire to forgive his previous actions, which would have been considered polite without the mocking tone. "HN. Let's move on, I don't care." One of the 4 huffed up, which is the largest, said, "We can't. We require a period of time to recuperate." Taiyuya scowled at the notion of being an unnaturally fat person. Jirobo's head trembled as he was annoyed by the profanity being used. "Taiyuya, it's important for you to also get some shut-eye. You have not progressed as much as Sakan and I did, but you are also exhausted." "Konoha will be on our way," Sasuke stated. Taiyuya shared a laugh with his audience. "Do you think we were not ready for something? No way, those thugs will have to go through a sea of hoaxed information before they can make their decisions. Orochimaru-sama will be presumed to be present among them. Even if they were sent away, it would be directed in the wrong direction. Konoha's force will be hindered for an extended period by the ill-fated old foe, which is why we can't escape. You can bet your eyes are pretty. Even after that unclean goat had prevented us from permanently killing the Jonin, Sakan growled. That waste was too much for us to handle, Taiyuya declared, gesturing to Sakan. Shut up, man. You are aware of his agreement with Orochimaru-sama, just like I am. He didn't care if some weak piece of garbage died, but he needed his best Jonin to stay alive. He didn't become a Hokage, but his plans did. Taiyuya shrugged off the threat of snatching the snake himself, unless you wanted to provoke it. Why did you decide to kill Shino? Sasuke murmured. You're angry because we killed your boyfriend, huh? Sasuke said, looking at the girl. I bear the responsibility, not theirs. I uttered the words, you chose to kill him, Kidamaru said with a frown. You are responsible for your own actions. The consequences are equally severe for others and you. It's not a fairy tale where everyone lives happily ever after. We suffer in this tumultuous world from the moment we enter. The individual who caused us to fall into this mess is the one who should be held accountable, Taiyuya stated with a grumble. You're asking this question because I know you don't. The fucked-up village of tree huggers was where you spent your life, safe and sound. Are you familiar with me? Sasuke asked. You're aware of the pain, but your parents didn't scold you. Taiyuya's growling revealed that your family was not eliminated by a sudden change in behavior, which Sakan failed to recognize. The bandits who killed your village did not enslave you, as Kidamaru grimacingly told them. After the slaughter of your entire community, you were not for sale, Jirobo sighed. Are you bold enough to talk about pain in a way that sets us apart from others? Regardless, Sasuke glared, but otherwise maintained his silence. He was convinced they were correct. While his choices may have hurt someone else, the Sasuke who was part of Team 7 and bonded with those who were close to him, is no longer present. The constant craving for retribution had caused Sasuke to lose his battle. He felt a strong pain in his heart, but it paled in comparison to the sorrow of remembering his loved ones with such clarity. He reassured himself that he would take Itachi's life, even if it meant taking his own life. This mantra was the driving force behind his survival during the difficult and lonely years following the Uchiha massacre. I am not comparable to the other individuals, as I lack their common sense. We have a multitude of tasks and obligations to undertake. I am a contrived person. This is the reason for my existence. Even Naruto is unable to comprehend the intensity of the pain. Despite Sakan's constant staring at him, the 5 teenagers managed to consume a quick meal without any visible reaction from Sasuke. Jirobo took a brief nap under the trees that covered the clearing. Although Kidamaru had taken on the role of watch guard, Sakan was too angry to even consider taking a break. Taiyuya was on her flute in the meantime. Sasuke was surprised that the obnoxious redhead could produce such soothing music. Despite the sadness, there was still enough peace in the situation that he quickly drifted off. The 9 inexperienced players, Kiba and Akamaru, quickly scoured the forests around Konoha as they picked up 5 different scents. Nevertheless, it was almost 2 hours before Karen made a sudden stop. The Uzumaki hissed, I detect them. Niji and Hinata both shook their heads when Shikamaru looked at them. They didn't observe anything. How far can you even dash? Karen's eyes were closed tightly as she focused solely on her inner eye, which Kurenai had dubbed the ability to sense. With the exception of Sasuke, 4. His chakra appears to be distorted. What is your interpretation of the statement? Ino was puzzled by the fact that a person's chakra would appear to be scrambled. Both of them have been harmed, Kiba declared. I caught sight of their blood and it smelt. When a person is injured severely, their chakra becomes affected. Karen hesitated and replied, no, this isn't unique. It's as if this individual has lost something. Something about him or something. Naruto Nizen's seal was strengthened by Sandaime-sama, and Hinata nodded in agreement. Shikamaru pondered, what might have led to that individual's fundamental chakra conversion? Nevertheless, it implies that one of them is weakened to some extent. Karen-san, how do you assess the strength of the others? Note, the big one is weaker than the scrambled one due to some reason. Is it possible for us to defeat them? Karen muttered, uncertain how to respond. It's impossible to put into words how good they are. I can only detect the power emanating from their chakras. It's a shame that there are 5 of them, and I can confirm my opinion on their impropriety. Despite Ino's protest with, "Hey! Why are you saying this to Sasuke-kun and Shikamaru?" the latter cut off her. What is the issue with Sasuke's chakra pattern? It appears to be darker than ever before. The Kyuubi's influence on him has left a close-up glimpse of Nissan. What did they do to Sasuke-kun? Ino, don't let your emotions take over, Shikamaru interrupted her. The blonde gazed in disapproval, but the Nara remained attentive. Although she may be troubled, this was not a situation where he would just leave things as they were. This was a matter of life and death, not some unintelligent instruction. Furthermore, taking into account his promotion, he was appointed as the makeshift captain by the rest. Is he bound or restrained, Karen? I don't perceive any indication of this. Karen shook her head in despair as she realized there were no drugs, genjutsu, or other reasons for him to be able to escape. I'm not entirely sure, but I don't know why. We need to get closer, so that Hinata-san or Niji-san could see us. Akamaru responded with a cooperative bark when Kiba growled and said, let's move on. The borders of waking and sleeping were near Sasuke and nodding. It had been a torrid day, physically and mentally, and with Taiyuya's music playing in the background, his thoughts had quickly faded away. Until Sakan opened an unusual bathtub, which was left on the ground with enough force to wake Jirobosa and his hooves, he did so. What the hell is that? Sasuke asked. Sasuke-sama taunted the Uchiha by saying that, this is a good place to be. We've made it to the point where we no longer reside in that trash town. I'm curious, what is that? Orochimaru-sama has given us significant directives, Sakan exclaimed bluntly. The last one is my favorite. It is necessary for you to die at one point. With sudden alarm, Sasuke looked towards the least intelligent of his 4 guards. You're telling me to die, right? Sakan swung his pants out and handed him a small bottle filled with pills. This is Saishingen. Taiyuya's expression was eloquent, and she contemplated taking one of these instead. It appears that Sakan truly wished for the Uchiha to perish from its wounds. Yukon's death has resulted in significant mental distress for Sakan, despite his reputation as the crazy one. He was always a dumb individual, but his level of retardation is far more than what we are used to from him. The second level of the cursed seal will be unleashed by Saishingen, she explained. However, the seal will also experience a significant increase in contamination speed due to this. If we don't do something, your death is inevitable. Kidamaru pointed out that controlling the second level requires your body to take some time to adjust, he said. Assuming you are in the second level, it is likely that you will have the same strength as us, but if you're in that stage, you may only have time to live before your final breath. Sasuke consumed his food. What can I do to adjust? Sakan, the individual who frightened Sasuke the most, replied with a smile. That's why we're here. We'll put you in a temporary coma by creating barriers. The curse's side effects will be lessened if we bring that thing in close proximity. With his barrier skills, Sasuke moaned, according to the video. The use of that ninjutsu branch, particularly by Naruto, had caused him to despise it. Are the 4 guards of Orochimaru-sama dependable? Seals and barriers are our strongest assets, as Kidamaru remarked. Bleezing was not the appropriate term to use. Despite their weaker counterparts, Kenta, Kazu, and Kabuto were always assigned to their own missions, unlike the Sound Four. I am determined to die, but I must kill Itachi first. Itachi, I will do everything within my power to seek retribution against our parents. Sasuke swallowed one pill from a bottle and opened the bottle, knowing that his face would be the last thing you will see before he sold his soul to the devil. He was observed by all four members. They had all gone through the same process and were aware of how much Sasuke would suffer. Kidamaru and Sukuna were both amused by the fact that they had a sense of what was to come. The Kyuubi's chakra poisoned Sasuke when he doubled over, which was as painful as never before. Jirobo looked at his teammates. Sasuke-sama will die if we don't hurry. Let him, Sakan smirked. We can't allow that to happen, but it could be the most gentle way, Tayuya sighed. The princess needs to be sealed off, please. Jirobo took hold of the shivering Uchiha and placed him in the wooden container. Positioned at one side of the container, all four focused their chakra and executed identical hand seals in perfect timing. The Sound Four members were greeted by a massive black cloud that blanketed the container and then descended onto the crate. The object was filled with darkness and only had a hard black mass left behind. By using sealing tags, the Hoen Fukoku, also known as Dark Seal, was stabilized by the four. The darkness had ensnared Sasuke. They were aware that he would need to live independently now. His failure or success hinged on the strength of his will. Despite their experience, Orochimaru was unable to alter the process and many people were unsuccessful. It was certainly not the most favorable way to pass away. The individual has burns on their chest, with the big one, Hinata said. The injuries are causing him to be immobile. It's safe to assume that none of the four have any knowledge of medical ninjutsu, as Niji pointed out. It's strange, but not a lot. The girl and the boy with 6 guns appear to be the most formidable adversaries. The highest chakra is found in them at a minimum. Choi said, "You got 6 arms." Ino was quick to respond and whispered the words out loud. "They're the savages of that Orochimaru," Kiba whispered. It was no wonder he had a group around him who are just as freakish as him. Even though there are 6 arms, I am still curious about the modifications made to the other 3. Those 3 are not typical. Shikamaru remained calm and avoided distraction due to the challenging group ahead. Should we attack or send some back for reinforcements, and continue monitoring them? They say, we have 9 and we are up against 4 of them. 2 of them are harmed. Is it possible for us to remove them alone? As you're standing there, Niji says, "Hey, are you okay?" What's the story behind Sasuke-san swallowing a pill? Hinata stated that it is having a severe impact on him. Do you believe that Niji's eyesight is superior to mine? He had not come across that particular detail. At least not from this great distance. It appears they are enforcing him into something. The chakra in his body was changing. It became darker and colder, causing Karen to shudder. Plushnesses in the composition of this product are more noticeable. Nonetheless, it appeared to be very unstable. Shikamaru-san's Sharingan was not the only reason for their lack of cooperation, I believe. It appears that they gave him something that influenced his cursed seal. It was reminiscent of his madness in the Forest of Death. Is that really as bad as Tenten said? What is the extent of its negative impact? It spreads a secondary chakra throughout his body, Niji stated. The news shared by Hinata-sama, Kiba and Karen-san also affects his feelings. Ino asked, "What the hell is this really happening?" Hinata observed that Sasuke-san is trapped within a barrier, making it impossible for him to see beyond. Karen shrugged, "I don't have anything left to say." It was a risky move, regardless of the outcome. It is as if they created a gap where Sasuke would not be present. Niji acknowledged that his Tenketsu sustained significant damage before they were able to seal the deal. Is he being murdered? Hinata inquired, before responding, Diana, I don't think Sasuke-san was detained at his request. I share your fear, Shikamaru sighed. If you had the ability to open your eyes instead of focusing on your heart, I think you would have seen that possibility. Sasuke's preoccupation with power was excessive. Is it accurate to say that Orochimaru's gift to him is a means of acquiring his power? The longer we wait, the stronger the seal's grip on Sasuke will be. It's important that we act promptly. 9 of us are injured, and 2 are wounded. With the exception of Karen, who was unsure about her strength, she acknowledged our shared abilities. Seeing that she did, Kiba answered. Kusa's lack of training did not compensate for her shortcomings. Although Karen is an excellent sensor, she lacks the necessary skills to participate in combat on the front lines, as he looked at her with a disconcerting expression. Don't let your mistakes affect you. Despite not intending to insult you, I don't want you to put yourself in harm's way either. You possess the qualities of an outstanding sensor. You were able to locate the legendary Tsunade, even though Jiraiya-sama couldn't. Have a chat with Kurenai-sensei and you'll be in for pity. Despite the prediction, Karen smiled slightly and said, I'm sorry I can't help you more. The girl was recalled by Shikamaru as the one who managed to escape the traps that had been skillfully set and hidden. The only drawback of those traps was their association with chakras, which is fatal. Despite Neji and Hinata's failure to spot many of the traps, Karen was still aware of all the danger. Despite our ignorance of their strength and abilities, we are unaware of who they are. It would be more advantageous for us to work in teams that are well-matched. It is now known that there are only a few individuals who possess the ability to attack with Doton Jutsus, including an archer. Regarding the matter of love, are you resolute in your decision to break up? Neji asked. Hatake Kakashi was killed by these men. The fact that they fought 3 times and lost in 1 battle is proof that their teamwork is effective. Unlike other teams, we are made up of 3 teams and have never worked together before, which means our team dynamics are likely to be significantly worse. We have the best chance of dividing them and taking each one down on its own. I'd rather let them work together, cover their shortcomings, and take us down one at a time than having to do so on my own. Instead of escaping with the coffin that holds Sasuke, why not pursue it and gather the remaining 4? Is it feasible to outpace them all? Is it advisable to take Sasuke instead of the 8 others, given that they are not evenly distributed among them? Moreover, we must still confront them, regardless of whether we choose 8 or 9. The latter case, as Shikamaru put it, offers a better chance for our team. In my opinion, it is preferable to split them up after attacking first. Who is the one to face off against, as Neji pondered for a moment before nodding off. It's your opinion, I think. Moreover, in the event that we do not attack all of them, it is possible to attempt to capture Sasuke and make him run away. It would be better to start off by attacking. Isn't the big man a type of close combat situation? Choi and Kiba should be tasked with handling him, Shikamaru suggested. If we are uncertain about the presence of ninjutsu, Lee should concentrate on the fighter with the scrambled chakra. I don't think that guy could do a jutsu in his state. Let's get in touch with Ino, he said. If he lacks the ability to control his chakra properly, my Shintensen no Jutsu would be more effective than normal. Karen had the capacity to assist Choji, Akamaru, and myself, Kiba stated. Very well suited. Shikamaru inquired if Neji and Tenten could handle the 6-gun man. Neji and Tenten nodded in agreement. If you're satisfied, I'll work with Hinata. If I trap the girl, Hinata should be able to use her Juken to disable her. Furthermore, with Karen, Neji, and Hinata being separated, at least 3 groups have a clear understanding of the situation. My clan is also sensory-wise. Ino protested. It seems unlikely that anyone attempted to start a debate with her on this issue. The time and location were not suitable for that. Waiting for Naruto-kun?" Hinata asked, while the others seemed to be preparing for battle. "We cannot afford to wait, Sasuke-kun is hurt and could die," Ino expressed. Shikamaru chimed in, "She's right, Ino, but not too enthusiastic. There is little reason to waste your life trying to save him in a futile way." Shikamaru ignored Ino's temper as he looked at the Hyuga and Karen. "You three possess the most accurate knowledge of our situation compared to others. Can we remove them or wait for Naruto to intervene and potentially sabotage us until Chie comes back with more reinforcements? We have a tendency to lose two battles at once, but when one of them emerges victorious, the odds only increase. They may have defeated Kakashi-sensei, but this time it's their turn to attack him. Moreover, in the event that Chie warns Naruto immediately, he should be present soon enough. We might lose our chance if we release them now. The advantage we have is not that they know we are here, but if we do follow them. If they can kill Kakashi-sensei, they will soon be aware of us," Shikamaru declared. Despite his efforts, he was still perplexed as to how they had managed to create web-like threads around the clearing. Without Karen, they would have missed some of the lines. Fortunately, the threads were produced using chakra, which enabled her to observe them. Despite its limited size. "Ask for my admonition, disregard it. We don't want to be taken out of one jutsu, so we can spread out. The speed at which the two injured players are eliminated will greatly impact their advantage," according to Shikamaru, who grimaced. Choji greeted his friend with a smile, saying, "We can do it, Shika." The killing of Shino, the wounding of Kakashi-sensei, and the uncertainty surrounding Sakura's survival remain unanswered. "We will repay the favor." Yash. Lee's unusual quietness disappeared like snow before the sun even plowed through. Tenten's eyes caught the fire unexpectedly, leaving her stunned. He must be furious as Sakura sustained injuries. She assumed that he had no knowledge of her life, which is even more concerning. While preparing her weapon scrolls, she mentally stated that it was Lee's equivalent of angry or I don't know what it is. The group of 9 jumped out of the trees and into the woods, where they were met by 4 surprised Shinji. With no small amount of pride, she tugged on the yellow fabric with great determination. The reason for Naruto's gift of a short-sleeved, tan kimono-like blouse to her was pride. She adored it, especially the dark, embellished border that was covered in embroidery. Additionally, he had given her a black obi that kept the blouse shut, and it was also capable of holding kunai and sealing scrolls. Along with her other finds, she had also found a pair of stockings and an equally dark skirt. Although it was not lavender, which was her favorite color, this item belonged to the Uzumaki Kushina family. Over and over, Karen narrated to herself, "My family is my business." Her family was a close one. She couldn't even conceive of it. She had a genuine family now. For as long as she could remember, she had a desire to have children. Karen had always been alone. Childhood memories were largely in blur, with nightmares of pain and isolation. Despite their small numbers, many of the other street rats had family members such as siblings, parents who were either sick or battle-stricken. Karen had not fulfilled her planned plans. Even after being thrown into the orphanage, Karen was always left feeling alone. She had lived alone on the streets of a city she couldn't remember anymore, engaging in acts such as theft, beggary, and food-related activities. The orphanage did not provide any of it, and the older and stronger children always took it away. Even though it was a life of extreme hardship, with the potential for suffering or even death, it wasn't as bad as what most elderly females who became homeless eventually would face. It was customary to capture and market street children. Another name for the orphanage was a warehouse where children were just commodities. Karen had only witnessed an older girl returning to her neighborhood once. When the girl was captured and sold, she was only 15 years old. She had always declined to discuss her past, and Karen would eventually understand why the girl's stomach had grown significantly in the months following. Despite the fact that Karen had healed all the bruises and cuts on her body, she couldn't help but cry when she found out why the girl was crying. The thought of it still left Karen feeling unwell. Karen's sensory abilities were discovered by a John in her village, leading to her being sold to Uzumaki and becoming ill or mothering. Whether she was willing or not, her DNA had been purchased for the purpose of reproduction. The militaristic society's need for additional soldiers was a constant requirement in hidden villages. Although boys with bloodlines were preferred for the slavery trade due to their ability to spread their genes more rapidly than girls, who gave birth once every 9 months, Karen and other girls were always sought after by the black market. Blood was the most precious commodity in their world, and a sense of blood like Karen's was considered extremely valuable. If she were to produce multiple male children with the same talent, a secret village could spread blood among generations. It would be insignificant if there were more weeping girls with bulging stomachs. Despite the darkness and hopelessness of her world, her team was chosen to take part in the Chunin exams in Konoha by chance. Uzumaki's teammates were reputed to be among the strongest of their generation. The combination of their abilities and Karen's sensory capabilities would make her a perfect fit. However, her fellow players were not as formidable as the village had assumed, and they perished promptly. Karen had only just been informed of their names when they were killed in that unforgiving forest. According to Kusa, she too was deceased. If Kiba had not saved her from that bear in the forest of death, she would have been rescued. His actions had spared her much more suffering and pain than he would have expected. Especially since that experience granted her admission to Konohagakure. She had been set free by Kiba. She went beyond being a small bowel movement on her legs. He brought her true happiness for the first time since she could remember. The fact that Naruto, the boy who initially frightened her with his dark chakra, had both Uzumaki blood and hers made her life more flawless. She was not alone anymore. Naruto felt a sense of excitement when he found someone who was truly his brother's daughter, regardless of how far they were from him. His wish had been fulfilled by Karen, who now has a brother to call her. Her sister was always called Ne-chan by someone who gave her a wild smile. She perceived the tan kimono-like blouse she donned as a tangible manifestation of her new relationship. The fact that he would give her something that belonged to his mother still disturbed her. Upon learning of his mother's existence, she was filled with happiness, and her delight was evident when he gave her something that belonged to Kushina. The joy she now feared was the loss of her beloved daughter. She would do anything to preserve the things she had acquired by doing everything within her means. Karen was aware that her power was severely restricted. I am unable to function properly and can barely hold my own. My sensory abilities are my only asset, otherwise I am useless. Karen's confidence was tested as she prayed that she wouldn't be burdened by Choji or Kiba-kun. The group that had followed the 4 who kidnapped Uchiha Sasuke was caught by them. Or directed him out of town, Karen stated. That would be a more appropriate way to express it. The Uchiha boy did not seem to be restrained, which was contrary to what the blonde Yamanaka appeared to believe. Karen was unable to find any indication that he had refused to comply with his capture request. The plan was laid out by Shikamaru, the only Chunin and unacknowledged leader of the group, leading Karen to wonder if this covert operation could be classified as a Sasuke retrieval mission. The traitors and runaways were treated unfairly in Kusa, where Karen had witnessed the treatment of those who went with them. Even though Konoha was more camouflaged than Kusa, Karen had no ill will to believe that Sasuke's traitory would bring good luck in her new village. The accounts Anko shared about her employment in the torture and interrogation unit were enough to make many people lose interest. I believe my beliefs are wrong, so I pray for his well-being. It's possible that I'm biased because of his attack on Nissan and other similar incidents. In addition, I'm not as skilled at tracking things as Kiba or Hinata are. Shikamaru snapped the girl out of her mind by saying, if they can take down Kakashi-sensei, they will be able to recognize us soon. Ask for my admonition, disregard it. We don't want to be taken out of one jutsu, so we can spread out. Karen's frustration was evident as she couldn't control her uncontrollable trembling. She was scared. She felt helpless but yearned for the power to protect everything and everyone she cared for. She had a cause to fight for the first time. She would give her all to help Kiba, Naruto, her new team, and her friends if asked. The scroll with exploding tags was taken out by her. She, Hinata, and Tenten had practiced making tags, but even though Karen's tags were less powerful than those of these three women, she hoped they would help them fight the largest of the four kidnappers. It was clear to her that he was not the strongest, so she knew it wouldn't be. Choji told his friend that Shikamaru can do it for us and he smiled at him. Karen was curious about how a boy like this had managed to perform so well in the previous exams. She found him to be completely innocent. However, the majority of their group appeared to be unaware of how gloomy their world was actually. The killing of Shino, the wounding of Kakashi-sensei, and the uncertainty surrounding Sakura's survival remain unanswered. The hefty fellow spoke with more unwavering determination than Karen had anticipated, vowing to repay the favor. Is it possible that this fight won't turn out as bad as she thought? Lee's unusual stoicism dissipated like snow as soon as the sun went down, and her expression became muted before dawn. The group of 9 jumped out of the trees and into the open ground, where they were met by 4 surprise shinobi. Illness was a significant factor in her life, she felt extremely worn out. She was perplexed by the eerie, white surroundings of the hospital for a few moments before she remembered what had occurred. Sakura was unable to express her frustration, anger, despair, and confusion as she wept and asked, "How could you possibly?" Otogakure had a group of those who were Orochimaru's henchmen. What prevented Sasuke from standing up and engaging in conversation with the 6-armed man, who had pointed his bow at him? Sasuke's efforts to save Shino were in vain. Despite being aware of Sasuke's anger and frustration, Shino believed that his actions were not justified. You allowed Shino to be killed without any emotional attachment. Didn't you feel the same way about him as I did? She felt as though her heart had been shattered. Her mother passed away during the invasion, and her father died in an accident due to a drunk man who was too drunk to walk down the stairs. She believed that was what had occurred. Even though Sasuke had left her behind, he still held on to them even though they were hurting. You didn't let me go. Did Sasuke-kun not realize her love for him until she was confined to an unfamiliar hospital bed? Without Sasuke, what was the meaning of her existence in the village? She had distant relatives and an aunt from her mother's side whom she hadn't seen for years because of the dispute her aunt had with Mabuki. The only person she remained connected to was Uchiha Sasuke, the same boy who betrayed her trust and teamwork. Even as she shed tears, she wished she had gone along with him. The poison senbon still had an effect on her, and it would have been nice if she hadn't been hit by them. Sakura had conversed with Tsunade, who claimed that the senbon had done little harm. One had detached a tendon, and another had cut an artery. Considering the fact that she had been hit by more than 12 needles, it's possible that her lucky break was due to this minor injury. Tsunade was curious as to why the poison did not cause any serious side effects. It seems that Orochimaru did not have a reputation for creating poisons that could prevent accidental death. If Sakura had not been distracted, she would have discovered that Sasuke and the other senbon had been prepared for him. Sakura was unable to come to terms with any of those things. The sensei of hers had been seriously hurt, and her colleague had perished, while Sasuke's teammate was apparently among the culprits. Sakura lacked an appropriate comment to make Tsunade, but it turned out that if she informed her that Sashalb would be considered a traitor for not having taken him on their trip. I am unable to disclose the identity of any of the grown-ups, she said. If someone who is not familiar with Sasuke-kun declares him a missing nin, they will be pursued and killed. It's impossible for me to let that happen. Without a doubt, there is an additional reason why Sasuke did not resist being taken away. It is necessary to intimidate him or any other form of interference. I have a deep love for him, but he has never shown any signs of doing such things, she said in her mind. They were accompanied by Sasuke. He permitted the individual to take Shino's life. Although Shino was unsure about his fate, Sasuke-kun refused to take him into custody. If Sakura had knowledge of Otonin's abduction, would she have come to his rescue? She yelled out, "What?" at herself. Naruto's death is a risky trade-off to avoid being killed off by him. The situation will be worsened by this. Upon discovering your intention to use him for this purpose, you should never assume that it will happen. The only thing worth doing is for Sasuke-kun to return to Konoha. If Sasuke-kun were to engage in a dialogue with him, would he be willing to change his mind? Could you tell me what you thought occurred to Kakashi-sensei and Shino? And what was the reason behind Shine's cryptic warning before we could return to Konoha? He was aware of something amiss with Sasuke. Despite Sasuke's belief in his perfection, Sakura was disoriented and lost interest. Her eyes, red from the tears she shed, were tearful as she looked around. Neither the door nor the window were opened, but something. "Good afternoon, Haruno-san," an apparently foolish old man said. Sakura was convinced that his appearance was simply a facade for concealing his abilities. There was virtually no sound, and Sakura had only detected the faint air that followed the person's movement. Shunshin no jutsu? With this level of stealth, he'd be like a jonin. Sakura said with suspicion. "Who are you? What's the reason for your presence here?" Despite his bandaged face, the elderly man seemed to be slightly amused at her. Shimura Danzo, the elder of the Konoha Council, shrieked. "Haruno Sakura, I am standing by you, my dear friend. How do you feel about the Uchiha child's betrayal of you and your team, given that Sasuke-kun did not commit such a sin?" Sakura's composed and unfeeling voice terrified him, as I could hear him speak of his senseless desire to seek revenge and save his family. "I have knowledge of the reason and person responsible for his departure. Subsequent to our lack of involvement in defending your teammate, can you provide an answer to my question? I'm feeling a bit unsure of what's happening. I feel like I need help and want to talk to someone. The saddened state of our lives is a source of sorrow and grief for many. Furthermore, I am livid." Danzo's disapproval was only evident when the corner of his mouth was turned a few millimeters down. The weakening of emotions is what emotions do, making a shinobi the one saying they are. Your lack of attention is a result of your distractions. If you are angry with the Uchiha, what steps will you take? You must possess strength to confront the boy. Sakura muttered, "Are you sure? I present to you that. If you had faster, you would have evaded those senboni. If you had more strength, you would have been able to fight alongside your fellow fighters." Danzo asserted that the outcome would not be significant. Your mental state is your weakness, which is the way you think. You slammed it, but you let your emotions take over. My training could be advantageous for you in that regard. It has the potential to enhance your strength. Nevertheless, I am uncertain if the reports were accurate. Your mother died in the invasion, and your father died shortly after. Your team disintegrated at the end of the season. Do you wish to maintain the feeling that you are here right now? Sakura inquired, but she failed to clarify what she meant before speaking. Her sense of inadequacy persisted, causing her to close her mouth. Despite Danzo's ability to see through her face, Sakura ultimately decided to take action after moments of silence. She muttered, "No. Is my training program worth pursuing? Would you be willing to do whatever it takes to preserve the roots of the tree that bears the name of Konohagakure no Sato?" She sensed a foreign chakra in her that affected her dominant partner. Something was awry. Something was terribly off. Despite her loud screams, Sakura appeared to be unaware of the danger. Danzo's eyebrow raised slightly. Sakura uttered the words, "I don't want to continue doing this, Danzo-sama." She felt a chill in her body due to the lack of emotion and thought, especially about the Sama that suddenly appeared. Don't be deceived by his words. Don's not believe him. Once you are fit enough to go home, my men will pick you up. Meanwhile, your primary objective is to gain Senju Tsunade's confidence. While Hitaki Kakashi is undergoing surgery, she will soon conduct a second examination of you. You are the perfect kunoichi for her to become an apprentice. Besides, with the circumstances in which you find yourself right now, you should be capable of making her feel at ease. Yes, Danzo-sama. Once you start and continue your training with Root, for at least a month, you will also spend some time in your spare time repairing your bond with Uzumaki Naruto. I am in need of a representative who is close to him. I am interested in knowing how he will act and react to the plans I want to initiate. I have to be able to predict his every move. It's important for me to comprehend that. You are a valuable asset to this game, Haruno Sakura, but every Konoha power is worth having because Uzumaki Naruto deserves it. He has the potential to shape the future of this community if he continues to develop in this manner. Those who have him in control will determine the fate of that person. My duty is to manage the Jinchuriki that is both explosive and formidable, so it's essential for you to perform your duties effectively. Danzo-sama, that's accurate, Sakura exclaimed softly as she looked at her new nanny. Despite the fact that the genjutsu had already taken its toll on her, she was willing to obey his commands. The Uchiha should be retrieved quickly as soon as I have the Jinchuriki ready, Danzo declared, partially to his surprise. He chose not to reveal to her that he had played a role in the Uchiha's betrayal by aiding Orochimaru in retrieving the boy and diverting attention from the village by creating deceitful leads. If her heart was in line with his aspirations, it would be easier to manage her. Shirsue's eye is one of the most valuable treasures in our world. Sadly, I failed to capture his other eye in person. The Kotoamatsukumi's battery was recharged quickly with the help of Senju DNA, which I utilized on Hisashi. If I hadn't prepared her like I did, it would have been harder to convince her. Genjutsu would consume more chakra as the target's efforts to convince them became more challenging. Sakura, despite his strength and subtlety in the Kotoamatsukumi's proposal to Danzo, would have taken much longer to recharge the stolen eye. A month has arrived. Let's take a moment to think about it. The correct decision was made to have Fu execute the girl's father. She was shattered by it. It eliminated the things that gave her hope, enabling me to use the one thing she still wanted as bait. Young girls are easily manipulated. Due to it, my plans can be executed much sooner than anticipated. My plan was foiled when Orochimaru became my pawn without my knowledge. To ensure that this part of the plan is set in motion, I suggest visiting Hyuga Hideo. Due to the manipulation of her dominant persona, inner Sakura was left to observe in silence. Danzo kept her under wraps and prevented her from doing anything while she was confined. The inner voice was entirely disconnected from the basic Sakura. What is the nature of Root's genjutsu? How did he manage to carry out such an incredible feat without any hand seals or chakra channels, making him seem like a dojutting practitioner? We're being attacked by these thugs? Kidamaru grumbled. All genin, we saw some of them when we watched the finals with Orochimaru-sama. Taiyuya, it's time to bring the coffin with you. Our main goal is to bring back Sasuke. These pieces of thrash will be too much for Sakan, Jirobo, and myself to handle. I'm going to break them down, Sakan declared, smirking. Do not engage in activities that are entirely retarded due to certain factors. You have just regained your second eye and haven't had sufficient rest to recover, Taiyuya said, lifting the wooden coffin that was sealed for Uchiha Sasuke. He would act as the navy for Orochimaru. Even though Orochimaru was a far cry from Kamimaru, with the last Kaguya in coma at this moment, he would still have enjoyed seeing the Uchiha. If we survive or perish in this mission, he probably wouldn't give us a damn, as long as we retrieve this pet, she expressed with bitterness. Our opinions are not significant. The sight of him placing the seal on us was a shock to all four of us. This Uchiha faggot is bound to follow the norm. If only I could destroy this entire world. The target had disappeared into the woods, leaving Shikamaru and Hinata to deal with their own three quickly, or else the little red-headed girl would slip away. The statement made by Shikamaru about women being troublesome is reverberating in circles. Is there a method to divide those three quickly? He quipped. Tenten smiled and took out one of her scrolls, giving him a wide grin. Is it possible for tags to detonate? Karen, could you provide some assistance? She muttered. Nodding vigorously, Karen replied with a yes. Let's demonstrate the lessons learned from Nissan. Just hit one ball, and we'll proceed, Shikamaru declared to others. The quickest players in the group, Kiba, Lee, and Niji, are on your side, so they must move quickly to face their adversaries. Keep them engaged so that they don't have to stop Hinata and me from pursuing the red-haired girl. Kadamaru was stoically moving his 6 arms across the expanse of ground. What is the topic of conversation? Let's crush on them, he replied. Sakan's complete insanity was now painfully apparent to Kadamaru. However, he never disclosed the truth about his relationship with Yukono's. It was assumed that they were brothers, but it's possible that their relationship was just two halves. One person is dead, and the other is suffering from crippling illness. It's possible that this senseless conflict will pose a greater challenge than anticipated. Shikamaru suddenly questioned whether he had made the right decision in picking the opponent, which was odd. They are very daring, pursuing us and attacking us in this manner, Jirobo declared, while Sakan waited for Kadamaru's authorization to launch an attack. I'm unsure if they are simply unintelligent or believe they stand to gain from our team. Sakan laughed off the suggestion, which appeared to be more hysterical than humorous. Taiyuya has taken the lead, do you think we should hold off? I mentioned earlier that if there is a chance to defeat all 9 morons in one attack, it's crucial to keep them united. If we spread out, Kadamaru expressed a frown. Isn't this a simple attack? Are you kidding me? The trio effortlessly avoided. Despite being aware of the presence of kunai, Jirobo was quickly cut off by a series of explosions before he could speak. Jirobo jumped to the right and witnessed Kadamaru jumping away at the other side of the smoke and dust cloud. The strong-shooting shinobi asked, "Where is Sakan now?" without any opportunity to observe his surroundings. He was forced to retreat deeper into the woods due to 2 drill-like cyclones. The term fire is used to describe the igniting of flames. It never ticked her off. She was unable to comprehend Tenten's allure towards fire. Fire causes pain, agony, and fear. How can someone be so excited about it? Karen asked herself. The element was the most detestable, and she had a strong distaste for it. Her worst nightmares were always plagued by it. The Getsuga of Kiba and Akamaru were being fended off by the largest of the 4. Jirobo had successfully defended against the first attack, but was now heavily forcibly interrogated. With Sakan separated from Kadamaru to fend off the quick-assured Rock Lee, Jirobo lost his coolness over what he believed to be a typical bunch of weak leads. These waste materials are more well-managed than I anticipated from a few inexperienced males. The exams did not involve this behavior. Doton, Doraku Geishi. Jirobo shouted with a growl. The jutsu constructed a massive wall of solid earth in front of Akamaru, which prevented him from following his Jujin Bunshin form, but the remaining cracks on the wall were enough to allow the pup to survive. Kiba-kun. Karen cried out as she saw the Getsuga making a direct hit. Unlike Karen, Choji persisted in paying close attention. Nikuden-san sha, he shouted, and then ran towards Jirobo in the form of a human bullet tank. The black marks on Jirobo's body were noticed by him, and shortly after he began his jutsu, Kiba was smacked from the box. Choji returned with a loud shout of "House Ho!" leaving Karen gasping in response. The sound Nin's hand struck the human tank with such force that it deflected away. Although it appeared to be effortless at first, Jirobo actually felt pain in his wrist. While the child with the dog is irritable, the little one who appears overweight has a significant impact. Despite the fact that I'm using the cursed seal to heal, he managed to hurt me like this by rubbishly applying pressure on his wrist. Despite acknowledging that her training had significant potential for improvement, she was spot on in her timing. Karen threw 3 kunais equipped with explosive tags that had different delay times before they would detonate after Jirobo looked down to assess his injury. Kiba stepped onto his feet, and Akamaru quickly joined in, appearing like a feral version of him. Choji, still slightly confused, quickly joined the Inuzuka race. As soon as the initial explosion occurred, Karen hurriedly made her way towards them. "Are you able to hold him down for a moment?" Kiba asked his teammates. Upon hearing the second explosion, Kiba looked confused and told him that he could merge with Akamaru using his Jinju Kombi Henge, Sotoro. "Karen, you are a smart person," said Kiba, who seemed insecure at the time. "Thank you," Choji expressed, but he only felt more positive. "Our Chogoroga will tear him apart," Kiba declared, while also delivering a startling bark from Akamaru. "It's crucial for me to have a strong aim. If we use our chakra for too long, it will result in us being unable to defend ourselves after the jutsu." Karen remarked that it was an all-consuming decision. "I'm not capable of overcoming barriers to prevent him from getting trapped." "I'll do it," Choji assured them, as he presented them with a box that had 3 compartments, 2 of which were filled with liquid. Karen questioned the potential impact of the yellow and red pills. "The 3 colored pills, Sanshoku no Gonyaku," Choji sighed. "I had already enrolled in the green one." His forceful back and aggressive approach made me realize that I needed more strength. "The pills may be harmful, but if this is the only way to go, the yellow pill should make me stronger than his current state." Jirobo was struck twice by delayed explosive notes, resulting in his fury. His warning was Buban Baika no Jutsu, and he fell to the ground with an enormous fist. Confused, disoriented, Jirobo found the fat kid had somehow caught him. "Is it necessary to use the second floor as a tool to eliminate these defenseless creatures while the rest remain indifferent and shout, 'Chogoroga,' with Jirobo's gasp?" The sight of explosions and fire left Sakan in disbelief and confusion. In contrast to Jirobo and Kadamaru, who were able to jump out and retrieve his footing, Sakan was caught in the middle. He was too enraged to delay and only took the blasts. After his brother's death, Sakan felt as though he had lost something in him. Blindly stating, "Ra," he charged out of the smoke. Is there anyone who was concerned about their eyesight or being injured? While rational individuals would, Sakan was not the appropriate term to use at this time. He was a demon-like figure, giving the impression of being infernal. With his head horned and his side covered in the demon leather-like material, Sakan was confident that his exceptional speed and strength would keep him able to take on some dumb genin. With a quick dash, the boy with crimson hair and towering eyebrows collided with him in an instant. Rock Lee outpaced Sakan by a significant margin after opening his third gate, Simon. If Sakan had not been consumed by anger, grief, and pain but become mentally shattered, he could have made a difference. At the moment, he felt like a pinball, caught in the middle of an intense wave of attacks. Ino observed with indifference as Lee seemingly shattered their adversary on his own. "I was aware of his skill when he battled Naruto. But this," she gasped in disbelief. "The way he transformed was so powerful that I could feel the power of his strength, but Lee is even more potent." Despite their apparent success, Ino was concerned that the other 3 kidnappers would be able to make similar changes. Karen, Niji, and Hinata had previously suggested that they could eliminate the shinobi, but they were unaware of their potential to transform them into much stronger individuals. "Leave him alone," Ino screamed. "I must complete this task without delay." Konoha Senpu, was shouted with a powerful kick, and Lee placed Sakon in the scorching dirt of the clearing. A big smile was seen from him as he lifted his thumb to signify his readiness. Ino shouted, Shintenshin no Jutsu. From the inside, she would tame their adversary. She believed that she would finish her job quickly because of the fact that this guy was just a brute in her eyes. Should Lee prioritize helping Choji, Kiba, and Karen or joining his teammates on the same team? He was highly convinced of the prowess of Niji and Tenten, but he was perplexed by Sakon's transformation. They underestimated the strength of their opponents. Despite Kakashi's previous weakness against them, Shikamaru had directed Lee and Ino to make quick work of their battle. If they were successful, they would act as a backup force for the others. The sound of multiple explosions in the forest led Lee to believe that Choji's group was closer. Lee remained silent as Ino unexpectedly screamed, "Let's assist our friends and conclude this incident." Ino's face contorted into a convulsing shape, causing her to fall down in agony. Despite losing consciousness soon after, she had already turned her lungs inside out. The wounded and insane mental state of Sakona had been underestimated by Yamanaka Ino. The right preparations are necessary to prevent a broken heart. It was not possible to enter the insane mind without risk. The Yamanaka had strict guidelines for that, and only those who had the highest level of mastery in their family's jutsu could access such thoughts without facing significant danger. Ino was unable to detect the death of Yukon, which had caused harm to Sakon's mind and turned away from In. Due to the harm inflicted on Sakon by Ino's jutsu, his mental faculties were rendered useless. Without the ability to articulate words, the wounded demon roared. Unexpected, Lee reacts just a second too slow to his teammates' sudden defeat after being surprised by how easily it had been won. Lee was hit in the face and subsequently lost control of the flying apparatus before landing against a particularly sturdy tree, which made her feel uncomfortable. The object in question was a massive boulder, not teddy bear sort of thing. Lee was oblivious to the fact. He was unable to see. He saw nothing but the demonic figure of Sakon, snoring like a wild dog, approaching him. Jirobo, who had been granted the curse of the seal, spat out blood from his body after it had not yet emitted tears. At the last second, he had already advanced to the second level of his cursed seal form, but Kiba's overwhelming force was too much for him to resist. His strength and endurance were exceptional. Even though Kimimaro would call Jirobo a moron in the same breath, he did praise him for his physical prowess. Jirobo was not born with any special genes. Although he had an unusual ability to absorb chakra from others, Jirobo was unaware of its connection to the bloodline's limit. His parents were ordinary citizens who lived in a border town that had become mired in an intricate war between two far-flung nations. He and his family were involved in an untold conflict that went unnoticed by history, with his little sister being among the casualties. Despite being left to die, Jirobo had buried his parents after waking up. There was so much debris that his sister could have been anywhere. Even now, he feels regret for not having been more persistent in his pursuit of her. He persisted in questioning. In the event that she had lived, what would have ensued? Despite her eventual demise, it was insignificant. If his sister had survived the attack and been thrown out in the wilderness, she would have had limited survival time. Orochimaru's discovery of Jirobo would have resulted in his death. Who would have thought that someone as flawed as him, an experiment, would be chosen as one of the greatest living shinobi's personal protectors? Pride was so powerful that it caused him to endure the ridicule from the other members. The worth of all the experiments was immense. As long as he carried out his mission and showed devotion to his Redeemer, Jirobo would remain alive. Despite the eventuality of leaving Jirobo completely unrecognizable by the end of the process, he would still be present. If the experiments had turned his body into a massive beast, he would still be alive today. It was a small price to pay for some broken ribs, as long as it meant serving the one who bestowed power upon him. The torn muscles in his left arm were nothing more than a nuisance, but the regret and hatred he still harbored persisted. Orochimaru had no intention of attacking Kyuzugakure, but he still wanted to avenge his family and little sister. The day when Otogakure would emerge victorious over the crowded village was anticipated by him. He planned to set fire to the village and eliminate all of its shinobi, personally. Despite the years of agony, he would be patient and teach them how to cope with it. The ludicrous red-eyed lion asked, "Would it be interesting to take these bugs out for a spin?" He grimaced while climbing a massive boulder, his enemies appearing covered in the shadows he had cast over them. The enormous earthly sphere was an impressive demonstration of the destructive force his second level provided him with. Jirobo's opponents were unable to keep up with him during the fight. Nevertheless, they did not escape like the majority of individuals. The girl with red hair was not able to escape. Despite the situation, Jirobo said in a smirk. He yelled out "Doton, Dorio Dango," with the intention of throwing the enormous boulder at them, and he was aware of the outcome. The whole area would be squished out. These bothersome trees would not endure. Like bugs, the three morons would be squished. Karen experienced a state of panic. The ferocious attack of Kiba had not been enough. She had a feeling that Jirobo's chakra had suddenly increased and then decreased after being struck by Kiba and Akamaru's combination henge. Jirobo's strength was still evident. The Cho'Garoga had already drained both Kiba and Akamaru's energy, making it worse. Furthermore, Kiba was suffering from a painful cut on the side of his forehead. One individual prevented the demolition of fortifications in a move that was intended to weaken them. Kiba yelled, "What the hell is that guy taken away from?" Karen expressed her dislike for her shaky voice, saying, "He still sustained a lot of damage, Kiba-kun." She was frightened and scared. Her mind was always preoccupied with encountering combat situations like these. She had a feeling of being haunted by something. Her dreams, fire, and screams were sometimes haunted by her while she was awake. Choji gasped in surprise as their red-skinned adversary lifted a rock of epic proportions, saying, "What the hell?" Kiba was visibly disappointed as he wondered how anyone could carry such a massive object with such little power. Karen realized that she had the ability to do such things, but how was she able to achieve such incredible strength? "Send me a handshake." They both wondered at her. What the hell was going on? She asked. "Leave me alone," Karen declared. One of her scrolls that were used for sealing was taken out by her. Naruto gifted her with a piece of equipment to enable her to train and copy it. Jirobo yelled out "Doton, Dango," at them. Choji's hand was transformed into a huge one, and he quickly changed it by using his semi-transformation technique to pick up the Uzumaki and place her on the rock. He didn't want to hurt her, but the fall caused her ankle to be injured. Nonetheless, it was no longer of interest. Karen yelled out loud, "Fuin," with hope that the weight seal would be enough to stop Jirobosa. The latter had just begun to throw the huge boulder, when suddenly its weight increased. The enormous object lost all its momentum and began to fall almost instantly. Even as he continued to stand on his back. Jirobo was stunned and said, "No way." He shouted, "Shogakisho." He was now in a position where he needed to be confident that the jutsu would be enough. The upward palm movement caused clouds of dust to cover him. An audible crack caused the boulder to break. Despite the fact that Karen was still taking care of it. Karen's ankle was strained as she freed herself from the way it hurt. It was preferable to experience a small amount of pain rather than being caught up in the destruction. Kiba rushed towards her worriedly, asking, "Are you okay?" Akamaru was moving in the opposite direction as he ran away. "Is it effective?" Karen asked, pondering her sore leg. "Despite everything, it will eventually be healed." Sharing this with Naruto, she seemed to have a benefit of being an Uzumaki. "Duh, the dust is too much for me to even notice." Karen, who had just taken off her yellow blouse, used her senses to determine the direction of her red-skinned adversary. He suffered a major setback, his reserves have been cut in half by almost 50%. Nevertheless, he is capable of fighting on the battlefield. Without taking food pills, Kiba-kun shook his head and exclaimed, "You've already taken them, Akamaru, so be it. It would be risky to take more. If we are poisoned, we cannot assist the others." Choji took out the box containing 3 pills and asked if they had additional explosive tags. There was only one surviving. The red one. He asked if Karen-san could defeat him and whether he had to pay the price. "I believe he went underground. Watch out." The Moguragakuren no Jutsu was a martial art that almost every Doton user had to learn. This jutsu, though not particularly simple, was highly sought after by individuals who had perfected the earth element moving effortlessly through the ground like a mole. Jirobo had been trained in this jutsu for a considerable period, as is evident. He was a significant departure from Kiba, who may have felt the same way, but instead focused on his own clan's methods. Is it possible that he is hiding under the ground? If not, then Kiba created 3 swift hand seals. "Doskiryu," shouted Doton, adding as much chakra as possible and quickly locating Jirobo. The Otonin had been trapped in a layer of mud that had formed beneath the surface. While Kiba was eager to acknowledge his excitement for the team, Jirobo made a sudden move. His left arm had already been shattered, but the impact of his right arm against the heavy rock had caused it to break. Jirobo's eyes were consumed by pure fury, and he had already stood before any of the 4, including Akamaru, could react. Kiba was completely taken aback by the charge against Jirobo, who was identified as Taken in his own Rakenkan Taijutsu style. When Karen saw the bloodied Inuzuka slumping on the tree, she was in a frenzy and said, "Kiba-kun." With a howling voice, Akamaru launched an attack on Jirobo, using the remaining chakra to construct his Jujin Bunshin. Karen was too caught up in the fight to concentrate on it. Instead she entrusted it to the now attacked Choji, who was supported by Akamaru. Jirobo, who was battered and bruised, had the sole responsibility of defending against their attacks. "Kiba-kun? Please. Say something, talk." Rock Lee screamed. Sakan had retaliated with force against him. Is reminiscent of a fractured bone in my cheek. The most youthful sensation was not achieved with his oversized brows merging into a frown. To make matters worse, Ino was out of the cold. Lee was unaware of what had occurred to her, but her condition seemed normal. Even so, she burdened him. The untamed Sakan was unrestricted in its actions. Ino, who was unconscious, was attacked by him with the same intensity as Lee did. Lee was incapable of taking a break and avoiding his adversary. By providing Sakan with a chance, he could potentially pursue the defenseless Yamanaka. He was resolute in his decision not to harm her. In addition to the event's unremarkable nature, Ino was also a dear friend of Sakura. It is a fact that the unyielding Rock Lee had no need for extra motivation to give it his all. Simon's insufficient sufficiency is noteworthy. If the 3rd gate is not effective, Lee sighed and decided to use the 4th gate instead. The 5th would hinder my ability to assist the others. Sakan continued to rage, his fiery fists swinging in uncontrollable anger at Lee. "Gate of pain it is," Lee muttered. He made a decision and decided it might be enjoyable. This was a much better alternative to regular training. Rather, it's more of a struggle. Shomon. Yes, and if I were to bring Sasuke-san back to Konoha, Sakura-nan would surely be grateful. Unless I am taking too much time. If I take too much time, Sasuke may be the first to find him and become a romantic partner for someone else. Even though he was in a state of devastation, Sakan could still feel pain. He was completely outmatched by the extinct Shinobi. Sakan experienced a shattering impact on the bones in his arm. He had bruises on his face. The ribs were fractured by either a foot or fist, which Sakan had not yet been informed of. His organs would suffer irreversible damage. Despite his mental state, Sakan was aware that there was only one way for him to succeed. There was only one approach he could take to prevent the green-clad individual from taking his life. After the latest attack, Sakan disappeared from view, and Rock Lee's already round and wide-witted eyes grew wider. The other boy's irrational laughter was heard by him. From where did the noise originate? Lee glanced at both sides of the field, but his adversary was absent. After Lee's departure, Ino was still behind the tree. She was unharmed. Is he missing? Lee was visibly disappointed. How could he find the one who had invaded his body? The Kekkei Genkai that Sakan and Yukon were born with allowed them to join their enemy. By breaking down on the molecular level, they could invade another body and reconstruct their own structure. At the moment, Sakan and Rock Lee were living together. His entire life, just like he had done with Yukon. Lee was left speechless as he felt his own left fist hit him square in the face. The taijutsu practitioner, who had perfected his physique to attain the unattainable level of strength and control displayed by Madogai, quickly recognized that he had lost control of his body for a brief period. His left shoulder was actually off. Lee was unable to provide an explanation for the cause, but something was off. This is not a genjutsu lesson because the deposition did not help. My opponent has departed, and I find myself uncontrollably insecure. Lee mumbled to himself that a genjutsu does not result in regaining control. I feel like I'm being controlled from A. That's it. Just like when Sunagakure had dubbed himself the puppet master. Even with the full force of the fourth gate, Lee couldn't resist the urge to move his hands down the throat. He has threatened to strangle me. It's a shame how unsatisfying it is. Lee knew that releasing the fifth gate would cause him to become immobile, but he couldn't let his opponent win. I apologize to everyone, but I can't help you all, at least I put an end to this maleficent puppeteer. Opening the gate caused damage to his muscles and seemingly disintegrated everything around him. The pain it caused was at least as traumatic as the power Lee gained. This was what would cause Sakan's control to be taken back. Lee had mistakenly thought Sakan was hiding in the forestry, but it turned out to be true. He felt the pain that Lee inflicted upon himself. Unlike Lee, Sakan was not trained to endure the damage caused by the 8 inner gates. The pain that Lee endured was something that Sakoni could not have imagined. After his body was ruined, he fled from Lee's corpse. The pain had left Sakan incapacitated and he was unable to walk. Lee was notified when something beneath his feet descended. Lee hardly shuddered when he saw Sakan lying on the ground. Sakan was consumed by his sorrow as he lost control of his cursed seal. During Lee's tirade with Konoha Senpu, Sakan returned to his basic form. Lee's kick caused Sakan's thigh to be crushed, and his cervical vertebrae to shatter. The soil was the site where Sakan's lifeless body fell. Despite his lack of understanding of the situation, Lee was not particularly concerned. His only wish was to lie down and rest, as the pain was too much for him to bear. Despite his efforts, he was able to drag himself back to Ino, who was still unconscious. She had lost her slender and pale appearance, now that she appeared to be in bed. Ugh, Lee yelled back. I expect I'll be able to get some sleep at this point. Let's hope that the others find it less challenging in their battles. Despite the discomfort, his exhaustion was so intense that he began to snore right away. Ino and Lee were defeated in the count, but Sakan was declared deceased. A triumphant victory, but one marked by pyrrhic delight. A young girl with red hair trembled in fear while trying to push the man away. Even though he had the same hair color as her, that man was too heavy. Her stomach turned upside down due to the unpleasant scent. She recalled with clarity the moment she was pulled out of her bed, which had been filled with smoke and noise. The woman was dragged through the house by a man with red hair until they came across her. The woman's worried expression had caused her to feel more afraid than the noise outside, and then she woke up after dark. Her 6-year-old body felt numb and her head was still ringing. Despite the weight of these people on top of her, she is still quite heavy. Who were the individuals in question? She was unaware of their identities. She was aware of her sense of uncleanliness. The left side of her head and shoulder were covered with a layer of blood, which was sticky and partially dried. It was there that it drenched her already red hair. Despite everything, she was unable to feel any injury. She had a lot of head pain, but there was no visible wound. Once more, she struggled to flee from the man and woman who were on her body. She was frightened by the sensation of coldness and stiffness. Despite her efforts, she was unable to remember the identities of these individuals. His red hair was identical to hers, and the woman's lavender dress gave off a familiar vibe. Hours later, she was in a state of shock and weakness, barely feeling alive. Both men had horrific burns on their backs, and she thought they had protected her. She didn't know who they were shielding her. What was the reason for their protection? The presence of green discoloration on their shoulders and heads horrified her. The small 6-year-old girl was unable to comprehend the sense of wrongness that existed in the entire scene. What age girl would have thought a corpse was real? But that's not what she wanted to think. Who were the individuals involved in the rescue operation and why did they come to her aid? Furthermore, who was the victim herself? Despite wandering through the rubble of the village's destruction, she couldn't find any answers. Certain things appeared recognizable. The fact that there was a shop selling bottles of special water with an amazing scent was something she had been aware of, much like the one on the corner. Despite the fact that those bottles were no longer present, the shop's colorful history had been lost to flames. On another street, she came across a boy who was only 3 to 5 years her junior, and they both had the same striking red hair. The lightness of their hair was noticeably lower, almost identical to each other, but darker, more resembled an orange than the crimson locks that fell from her own head. His face bore a striking resemblance to that of the red-haired man who had saved her from the inferno. She couldn't help but cry upon seeing the boy's ripped flesh. She couldn't remember him, but seeing him in this way made her feel as though she had ripped apart her chest. She cried and shook the boy by his shoulders, but he did not react. Despite being colder and less stiff than the others, his orange eyes would not dissipate. He was too heavy to handle. Even though he smiled at her, the little girl couldn't seem to remember and asked, "Who am I?" She wept in frustration. "Where's everyone? I need your help." Help, but she was met with no one coming to her rescue. She wandered around for hours, but nobody could identify her. Each individual in the village had met their demise. The little girl was ignorant of the reason. Fire, smoke, and explosions were the only things she remembered. The boy and the 2 adults were unknown to the girl. Everything, including her name, had disappeared in her memory. Her jacket, which had blood on it, contained her name that she would later find. Everything else was removed by the explosion that resulted in the head injury. "Karen. Kiba-kun, please. Say something. Please. Talk. You can't be true," she said. The same horrific scenes that had haunted her dreams were repeated in her mind. Her past, it seems. Her memories were buried because she didn't want to remember that despair again. Even though Kiba was still in his prime, he reminded me of the red-haired boy's appearance. The sight had evoked something within her that she had not experienced in years. Despite her efforts, Kiba was left without any help. She hoped to be able to cure him, just as Tsunade could have done. She wished she had been stronger to help him. She perceived herself as a failure of kunoichi. The boy who rescued her from hell, Kiba, would simply end her life in her embrace. Every other emotion was smothered by her panic. She was oblivious to the fact that Choji and Akamaru fought their opponent until his transformation faded away. She was unaware of how Ino ended up being with her at some point. Half conscious and half dragged by the blonde, Lee was left unresponsive. Despite being in a catatonia, she did not even know it when Kiba woke up. The boy made an awkward effort to soothe her, even attempting to flee from her grasp, but she was unaware of the situation. Karen was happy that the boy, who had lost his life, was still alive, and Akamaru did not show how he leapt to them. The only thing that could awaken Ino from her state of being was when she screamed loudly of the top of her lungs. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button and subscribe for more content. Support the original author by clicking their profile link in the pinned comment of the first video of this series. They deserve the love. Want early access and exclusive content? Join my Patreon community, link below. Your support fuels these videos. Drop a comment with your thoughts, and I'll catch you in the next video. Stay entertained, stay safe.